cheese taquitos do you think I can eat in 60 seconds?
Kevin, have we screened all of these? We haven't? But we can? We can't. Great. Straight from the heart of America, raw and unfiltered, Rockville, Maryland,
is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program here. As always, you're invited if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Ian and Joa, and remotely we also have
Reed.
Reed Coverdale is with us as well from Naturalist Capitalist. That is his podcast. Joa is going to be here in just a moment. He had to step away for just a quick moment, but he is also the guy behind the YouTube and Odyssey channel Breaking the Flaw. Reed, welcome back. Did you get a chance to get back to your show this weekend? I know you've been working like crazy.
Sort of, yeah. I put out a short episode to audio exclusives, and then I've done a few live videos just from the truck, but haven't done any long-form episodes. Hopefully, we'll be doing that this weekend.
Do people really like that stuff, that sort of on-the-road reporting? I bet that goes over pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, because it's what gives me my unique flavor, you know? I mean, lots of people talk about libertarian stuff, but if you're doing it from a truck, it just makes it that much more unique, I guess, so.
It's a real thing, you know? It's not just somebody in a studio behind a microphone. Sure. So, you know what? It's been in the news for like the last 2 days. There's all these people, especially libertarians, and this is the thing I just don't understand, is why anyone who's a libertarian gives a rat's behind as far as what is going on with this federal government Speaker of the House situation. Why are so many people paying attention to this as though it matters one whit which psychopath they put into this particular seat? Have you been paying attention to this? Do you have any idea why someone who would call themselves a libertarian would look at this with any moment, you know, of concern, of thinking that this would matter one bit? It's very confusing to me.
Sure. So I think it matters what your objective is. I mean, I don't expect to get Justin Amash as the Speaker of the House or whatever people are.
It's a ridiculous fantasy. Yeah, I've seen that one floated around too. Like, wow, what?
I mean, I love the idea, but it's not going to happen.
No way. But, it's not even going to be proposed.
No, I doubt it. The thing that I enjoy about this, though, is I think it's kind of transparent that only a few people are running Congress, and I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to that fact.
Man, I hope you're right about that. But before you get a little deeper into the analysis, can you kind of recap for maybe people who haven't been paying close attention, as I'm sure a lot of people haven't, because who really cares about this situation? But it's all over the headlines. What is going on? There's this guy named McCarthy. He's apparently been put forward as the new potential Speaker of the House. He's a Republican. And I thought the House was mostly Democrat. Did the Republicans take the House? That's how disconnected I am.
Yeah, the Republicans did retake the House, not by a lot, just by a little bit. And yeah, McCarthy has been the guy that they want to make Speaker of the House. And I forget what the number is. You need like 208 votes to get a majority or something, or 220. Maybe it's 220. I forget. Okay. But you need to get at least like 220 votes or something, and he can only get like 208 or something.
Isn't it 218? Isn't it 435? So more than half of 435.
So 218. Yeah, no, you're right. 218. But he's getting like around 200 every time. And then it's funny because the Democrat is getting close or more votes than he is, I think, because it's such a close split between the Democrats and the Republicans.
Because there's like 20 Republicans roughly who aren't going with the team.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I love that too. That's another side of this that's very interesting because they're typically like Trump loyalist Republicans. It's Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert and a few other people like that.
Didn't Trump come out this week? Sorry to interrupt, but didn't Trump come out and like try to rally his team to the side of the mainstream Republicans?
Yeah, that's what's so amazing about this is that, you know, these you're starting to see maybe a little bit of you know, a break between MAGA and Trump, which I think would be incredible if that happens, because it's just more you know, more transparency into how broken everything is, and maybe people would start thinking a little bit more independently or whatever. But yeah, Trump has come out a few times and said, guys, knock it off. You need to just support McCarthy. And Lauren Boebert is like, no, Trump, you're wrong. I'm not supporting McCarthy. So just seeing that type of stuff is kind of like, wow, it's very different. I don't think something like this has happened in my lifetime. Maybe?
Well, they are saying you know, the headlines, that sort of thing, is saying this is not like the first time since 1859 that this has that this has gone on so long. Apparently, it's been 11 attempts now, 11 ballots to try to get somebody elected to this seat, and that hasn't happened. So, I mean, from that perspective, it is fairly unique. It's kind of interesting from that perspective. I do appreciate where you're coming from in that. Watching these people fight and watching the infighting is somewhat entertaining and, you know, refreshing that they're not all on the same page.
I don't know. I'm about to fall asleep.
But we know, but we know that at the end of the day, some a-hole is going to get picked for this job because that's the only choices they have is some sort of power-mongering sicko, and that's who's going to get put into this. It's not going to be Justin Amash. I don't know why people even believe for a moment that he has some sort of chance at this. But even if he did, it still wouldn't make any difference because it's still 435 drunken lunatics up there that are going to make the government bigger, and it doesn't matter who's in this position. It never has.
I don't know why they were so upset about McCarthy, because if we got McCarthy, we absolutely would have drained the swamp and imprisoned Fauci and, you know, like done everything that we want to do. I mean, I don't know what we just need to let the Republicans do what they need to do, and everything will sort itself out. You know, I don't know why we're binding their hands and holding them back.
I detect a little bit of sarcasm there.
Just a little bit.
I just think they need to vote harder.
Oh man. But libertarians, well, like, I mean, I get from where you're coming from on this, Reed. It's like, okay, watching them fight amongst themselves, there's some entertainment value in that, and maybe, like you said, maybe some sort of independent. I'm not optimistic.
Well, like, not even
that.
just like Matt Gaetz coming out against Trump, but I mean, I've seen probably hundreds of Republicans or right wingers or conservatives or Trump people or whatever on Twitter who are furious with Trump and with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she's actually, surprisingly, if I thought there was going to be a big dissenter, I actually thought she would have been one of them, but she is like hardcore shilling for McCarthy, saying we need to vote for this guy, he's the best, blah 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 blah, you know, like we need to stop fighting each other, we need to fight the Democrats, whatever. And so seeing tons and tons of MAGA people saying, no, screw you, Donald Trump, screw you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, we don't want this guy with a Ukraine you know, lapel pin on his jacket when he doesn't even have an American one on there. Like, seeing that to me is cool.
That's a good
point. It is cool to see it. So,
well, and maybe it'll bode well for the Republican Party infighting and destroying itself here in New Hampshire and making it weaker, so the Free Staters can take it over. I'm just trying to look on the bright side.
No, I like that.
Of what this what this could shake out to.
Yeah, I think instability within the two-party system, and when you see people breaking ranks and going against their typical incentives, that's always exciting to watch because you never know like what is going to come out of it. So I'm fascinated by this whole thing, and like I agree with you. I don't think any great person is going to end up being nominated, because I've had people message me that they're like, who do you think it's going to be? And I'm like, who cares? Like, that's not what I'm getting out of this.
Doesn't matter.
At the moment.
Yeah, I like the idea that both sides of the aisle are getting frustrated with both sides of the aisle. So, and the only thing they can complain about libertarians is they're wasting their vote. Well, guess what? Now it's not a wasted vote anymore, because they're not the ones ticking you off.
Well,
right?
it's never a wasted vote, and that's of course, the wasted vote syndrome is what we deal with every election cycle as libertarians. The reason why it's not a wasted vote is because if you're voting for what you believe in, then you're not wasting your vote. If you vote against what you believe in just because
that is absolutely a waste.
Right, just because you want to quote-unquote win or be on the winning team, that's the stupidest reason to vote ever.
It's as if they're making a bet like in Vegas or something. No, you're not making a bet. You don't have to support the team that you didn't grow up around, okay?
Whoever wins, we lose as far as the Democrats or Republicans go. But, of course, the Libertarians. Go ahead.
I saw a tweet from Justin O'Donnell. I'm going to try to pull it up here, but he made a great point about the Republicans by not electing a House Majority Leader. They've done more to protect Americans than any Congress in the past 100 years because they're making them so ineffective.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing is the more they fight each other, the less time they have to screw the rest of us over. And so to that extent, I hope this goes on forever.
Yeah.
I hope that they're still doing this a year from now, and they haven't had a chance to pass another 4,000-page piece of legislation because they're too busy log rolling and back scratching and trying to curry favor with one another to get one of their people over the hump.
Well, I can promise you that the vote will come to conclusion at the very max when it's time to vote for their salary increases.
Oh, certainly.
So that's
they
when
got
they're
their priorities straight, for sure. Actually, there's even here in New Hampshire, I heard that there's a proposal, and this comes up every now and then. I heard there's a proposal to increase the salary of the state reps and the state senators from like $100 a year, which is what it currently is. Right. Plus, I think there's a gas stipend, but basically $100 a year up to, I think it was like 5,000 or something.
Yikes,
some insane.
No.
Yeah, so I think it's going to go down in flames. It usually does. There's almost no chance.
Well,
that
if they're shooting for such a high number, it's not going to go through.
Well, I don't even want to see it go to $200.
No, of course
I think
not.
they should cut it in half.
I think they should cut it completely.
Cut it out. Gas stipend, and that's it.
I've been saying for years, okay, is that if you really want to be a public servant, you shouldn't get paid for it. You should be doing it the gracious of your heart. And true. I'm talking about cops to DOT to every little thing. And if you don't like it, privatize it. Then you can get paid, and then you'll be doing it because you want to come home to your family with something, and it's not because you were just milking the cow all day.
There was the good news this week that the state representatives here in New Hampshire did vote against a proposal to restrict the right to bear arms, meaning the state reps themselves.
Nice.
And just to clarify, in like the history on this, it's always been legal for the average person, for you or me or anybody who's not a state rep, to go into the state rep chambers and watch while strapped. You can have a gun as long as you're legally able to carry it, right? Like I can't because I'm on bail conditions. I was going to say technically I'm convicted at this point, but if you're not a felon and you can legally carry a gun, then you can carry it into the chamber. However, there was a few years where the Democrats were running things in Concord where they restricted the state reps' right to carry. So the reps themselves.
Actually, I kind of like that.
No,
I don't because it's less freedom.
Yeah,
but in another sense, it's like, oh, we're unarmed, but everyone else, our constituents, are armed, so it makes them want to vote the right way.
Yeah, they should still.
I don't like the intimidation effect in that, but
they should still be able to defend themselves. I mean, if some lunatic comes in,
I agree.
It's a fairly well-armed populace, right? Of those 400 people, 200 something of them are Republicans, and even some Democrats in New Hampshire carry guns. It's
a lot better armed than the quote insurrectionists who went into the Capitol 2 years ago tomorrow.
For real.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. If something like that was tried in New Hampshire, there would actually be state reps, instead of just cowering like they did in D.C. There would actually be state reps who would be like shooting at assailants.
It's like click clack, put that podium down.
Hey, let's go to the phones here. We got Renee on the line in Louisiana. Renee, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Renee. What kind of subject can I present?
You usually have to figure that out before you call into a talk radio show.
No. I have one. Don't worry.
All right. Let's hear it.
Well, libertarian stance are believing in well-armed citizenry, but what y'all think about the military? How would that fit in?
Reed, you want to handle this one?
Yeah, I mean, what do you mean? Like, do we think because we believed in well-armed people that we don't need a military, or like what's your question?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I'm sure you want restrictions on it, but how would you complement that or add that or not add that to a libertarian society? Because you do have non-libertarian societies you have to, like, exist with, like it or not, and some of them are greedy for big armies, like China and Russia and those guys.
Yeah, so I think even constitutionally, correct me if I'm wrong, Ian, you probably know more about this, but constitutionally, there wasn't actually supposed to be a federal military initially, correct? There's supposed
no
to be
standing army. I think the Constitution provided for a navy, if I recall correctly, but no standing army. They had to call that together.
Yeah, it was supposed to just be the state militias who basically put everything together themselves. And I realize we're in a completely different world now, and trying to get from where we are all the way to that.
A lot of backpedaling for sure. That needs to happen.
But I mean, at least for now, I think we should be cutting the military budget by like 80% to start.
I think most libertarians would agree that they should bring the troops home, number one, and then cutting the budgets from there would be definitely a good move.
If you were to bring the troops home, I would also say that the troops coming home should be able to take home their arms, right? So it's like, instead of like, leaving there because no troops are really here in the United States, very few.
Yeah.
So if they're going to be coming back, well, we don't want them to leave these arms behind to all these, whoever's.
You mean like Afghanistan?
Yeah, like Afghanistan.
I was going to say, unless it's the Taliban, then we leave it behind.
Well, it doesn't matter where it is, because like, we're not in control of those countries and we don't know what they would do with them. So let's let them come back with them.
But it's a complicated matter. I mean, my grandpa used to say, we don't need no army. We have nukes, like we could just press a button. But the thing is, you can't press the button if they already stop you from releasing what the button pressed. And you can't really perceive what they're going to do unless you have listening posts. I mean, it's a game. You don't necessarily have to conquer and dominate them, but you do have to have ears present everywhere, and satellites can't.
Well, that's the thing, Renee. Yeah. You don't have to do that if you're not a threat to the planet, right? So if you don't have this massive oppressive force that exists all around the world and is used, just to help out oil companies or whatever, and just destroy innocent life all around the world, then you don't have to worry about what somebody else is going to do somewhere else on the planet. If you actually, if the U.S. government were to follow, say Ron Paul's view or the Founding Fathers' view of don't get into entangling alliances, don't get out there and try to control the world. Just focus on your own self. Make yourself as free as you possibly can. Free trade with the whole rest of the world. You're not going to have people out there trying to kill you.
Like a hypothetical, like if you had a libertarian president, a libertarian House and Congress, Senate, whatever, is that the whole world is going to be like, oh, we don't need to be trying to, outstand these other countries. The United States is really well hated, but like it'll take some time for that. But I think other countries will be like, okay, we do not need to keep raising our arms up because the big threat is now nonviolent. They're not going to do this. They're not going to cause conflict around the world, and they could just start discontinuing their arms productions because of that.
Yeah, actions mean a lot, right? Talk is cheap, but if the troops were to be withdrawn and you were to actually pare down the budget, you'd still have an incredibly easily defended place because there's a ton of guns in the United States. We don't need the military to defend the United States. People can handle that. Renee, any other thoughts you want to share?
Well, the thing about guns, it's you can watch Rambo. If you've been in the military, it's kind of like football. When you play like they have some football games like how you call that, dodgeball, everybody for themselves. The rock star that's the best at it's going to prevail. But the history shows that kind of like the Native American Indians, they had great warriors, they have great tactics, their raids were fantastic. But in the end, they could not have withstand the numerical, well-controlled, somewhat European-style armies that the Asians practice. And the Chinese, regardless of what you do, China their interactions with all the other countries may be not necessarily libertarian. It's very oppressive, aggressive, and using and unmerciful in politics, like the Animal Planet. Sometimes you got to have the lesser evils, and
hold on too. China poses zero threat to the United States. They pose a threat to the United States domination of the Pacific. You know, that's even what our State Department says. They won't even say they actually pose a threat to us. They say they pose a threat to the United States domination of the Pacific, and the Pacific borders China. You know, like, I mean, when they have a diplomat go to the Philippines and talk friendly with someone in the Philippines, we get angry about that. I mean, can you imagine if China were arming Cuba like we're arming Taiwan right now, how we would react to China? I mean, we would be absolutely belligerent. So when they're acting like that with countries bordering them, to think that we need to get involved and do something about it, I mean, it's just crazy.
Thank you, Renee, for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. Also, you brought up the American Indians being slaughtered by the settlers back then, and of course, the Europeans had better technology, right? And they were able to crush them because of that. We've got plenty of technology, right? And we've got a large number of people. Just here in New Hampshire alone, New Hampshire is the #1 most machine gun owning place on the planet, and the old apocryphal quote, it's attributed to, I believe, Admiral Yamamoto, but it wasn't his quote. Who knows who said it?
Blade of grass.
Yeah, the blade of grass. They wouldn't invade the United States during World War II because behind every blade of grass there's a rifle, was the impression. And, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it's certainly more true in places like New Hampshire than it is in California.
Really, yeah.
So I think we would do just fine. And there's never been any serious threat of an invasion like that in hundreds of 200 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Renee. But since Renee called in, I've got some Louisiana news here from Motherboard over at Vice.com. Viewing Pornhub while in Louisiana now requires providing a driver's license to verify your age. A new law makes porn sites liable for content deemed quote-unquote harmful to minors if it doesn't install age verification technology for anyone accessing them in Louisiana, and it's already affecting how people in the state access Pornhub. The law was signed by Louisiana's Democratic Governor John Bell Edwards in June and became effective on the 1st of this month. The Act 440 states, quote, any commercial entity that knowingly and intentionally publishes or distributes material harmful to minors on the internet from a website that contains a substantial portion of such material shall be held liable if the entity fails to perform reasonable age verification. So what does it mean, harmful to minors? Well, they defined that here. I don't even know if we can say a lot
parents
of
not being responsible with their kids?
Yeah, well, they want the government to take care of your kids, apparently. We'll get into that coming up here, and you can share your thoughts. Are they going to be able to regulate the internet?
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in Congress, has failed yet again to be elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. Despite making fresh concessions to hardline right-wingers, the Republican Party is deadlocked, with far-right members of Congress continuing to block Mr. McCarthy's path to victory. At one point today, Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida even voted for former President Donald Trump to become Speaker of the House. From FSN's Washington Bureau, Nick Harper with more.
Reports are that McCarthy has offered sizable concessions to the group of 20 hardline Republicans who continue to vote against him. Another candidate may need to be found, and with the Constitution not saying that it has to be an elected sitting member of the House, Donald Trump has been suggested as the person the party could rally around.
In other news, Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered a 36-hour ceasefire in Ukraine to mark Russian Orthodox Christmas. The authorities in Kyiv say they will not observe the ceasefire, accusing Russia of engaging in a cynical trap. Yuri Sak is an advisor to Ukraine's Minister of Defense.
We don't believe a word that comes out of the mouth of people from the leadership of Russia. So what they have done now is a cheap, almost inhumane propaganda trick for their own domestic audiences.
Meanwhile, France has agreed to send several light tanks to Ukraine to support the country as it continues to battle Russia. The announcement of the tank delivery follows a phone call between French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Mexican forces in Sinaloa have arrested the son of jailed drug lord Joaquin Guzman, also known as El Chapo. Ovidio Guzman Lopez, also wanted on drug trafficking charges, was arrested after a violent confrontation early on Thursday that saw a civilian airliner damaged by gunfire as it was preparing for takeoff. There are to be no surprises when Prince Harry's memoir hits bookshops next week. A series of leaks have revealed that the Duke claims Prince William, his brother and heir to the throne, physically assaulted him during a row over Meghan Markle. He claims that he tried cocaine at the age of 17, claims that he killed 25 people while serving with UK forces in Afghanistan, and describes Prince William as his arch nemesis. Trying to keep up with it all, royal correspondent Peter Hunt.
The most striking of many striking sentences was an account of Prince Charles, now the King, talking to his sons at the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, where Charles said, "Don't make my final years a misery." And it's pretty clear from just that one sentence just how difficult this has been behind the scenes, and now it is no longer behind the scenes, but we are all experiencing it and learning about it through these excerpts in advance, as you say, of the book actually itself appearing.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here if you want. The number is 603-283-6160. And do you think that the government should be forcing websites that are of an adult variety? That's what they're looking at doing here, actually doing in Louisiana right now. Forcing websites to do identification checks on their users, because that's what's come into play here just within the last few days, according to Motherboard over at Vice.com. If you want to weigh in on that, want to hear from you, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And also, definitely want to make sure you know about the Bullion Max. Bullion Max, by the way, has some incredible offers for you on gold and silver, which, of course, are some of the best, most stable investments in many generations. People who've been dealing with inflation all around the planet, especially here in the U.S., you got to do something about that. And one of the things you can do is you can take those dollars that continue to be inflated and you can put them into something of real value. And right now you can get a special offer, which is employee pricing on Bullion Max's Silver Starter Kit. It's 5 ounces of silver from the world's most popular mints, and they'll throw in a free gold back as well. Just go to bullionmax.com/FTL to get yours. It's a great time. Well, anytime's a great time to get precious metals like gold and silver. So get started at bullionmax.com/FTL. Now, look, Pornhub, it's probably one of the world's most popular Websites, last time we looked at like the top 10 or top 20 websites, it was definitely in, if not the top 10, certainly was in the top 20. And now Vice is reporting that Louisiana is cracking down with a new law that's just gone into effect on the 1st that says any commercial entity. So this isn't just Pornhub. This is a large number of websites on the internet that, quote unquote, intentionally publishes or distributes material harmful to minors on the internet from a website that contains a substantial portion of such material shall be held liable if the entity fails to perform a reasonable age verification methods to verify the age of individuals attempting to access the material. Now, what it means by shall be held liable, I don't know if they're talking about some sort of criminal charge or if it'll be financial penalty or whatever, but according to the definitions in the law, at least according to Vice, substantial portion is 33.3% or more material on a site that they consider to be harmful to minors, and according to the Act, the definition of harmful to minors is that which appeals to prurient interests and consists of, and then there's a bunch of like sexual descriptions that I probably shouldn't read to you on the radio.
Fair
like
enough.
I'm not comfortable reading a lot of these things, but consists of showing certain genitalia and things happening with that genitalia. To sum up what they see here, and that it has to, quote, lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, unquote, for someone under the age of 18. So
this is like, right, there already are warnings that pop up, right, on these websites. So then you just have to put your driver's license in now on top of that. Is that basically the big change?
I'm guessing so. Vice did apparently go to, or Motherboard went and tested the verification. They say Pornhub directed them to a site called All Pass Trust, which is a third-party identification verification site, which then connects to LA Wallet, a digital driver's license for Louisianans. Pornhub says they do not connect data during this process, but what it doesn't say...
Oh, yeah, sure they don't.
Well, what it doesn't say is what the procedure is. Because if it's just showing an ID, then okay, well now the teenager that just stole their parents' credit card can now just steal their parents' ID.
Or you got grandpa's ID that just passed away or something.
Yeah, or if it's a little more fancy, it could be what they call a liveness detection, where they scan your ID and then they use the actual, like, they'll take a video feed of your face to make sure that you're actually there. So I don't know what level of requirements they're putting into play here, but these days with all the artificial intelligence going on out there, it's not hard. A teenager that has been paying attention and knows what they're doing could easily, with like a simple app, try to duplicate their grandfather's face or whatever by essentially creating a deep fake.
Yeah, some apps require, like dating apps require you to put your hand on your head and point a certain direction.
Oh, really?
So what if AI? You could just like set it up in AI to do that,
I bet you could.
Yeah.
It's getting to the point. I was just telling you before the show, Joa, that the Stable Diffusion artist, the AI art robot, or whatever you want to call it, AI, this is the one that you can run on your own computer, so you can kind of roll your own now. You can take your own photos of yourself or your dog or whatever, anybody you want to, some celebrity, and you can put them, although most of the AI already has celebrities in them, so you can take yourself and you can put yourself into this AI, and then you can type out whatever sort of scenario you want yourself to be in.
I always wonder what I look like with the female genitalia.
Me too, Joe. I think about that every time we're in studio together.
Now you could find out, Joe, because there is a version of Stable Diffusion that is unedited, uncensored, and so that's a possibility.
Good times are ahead of me.
Yeah, but that's another good point, because like, you don't really even need Pornhub or any of these websites now. You could literally download Stable Diffusion, get the uncensored one, which is version 1.4. and then you can just generate pornography. You don't even have to have real quote-unquote porn. You can just have the AI generate as much of it for you as you want to. It's not video, but it's
if you're really
images.
good, you can just close your eyes and imagine things.
This is true. Well,
stop that government.
Well, that's the point here, right? Like the idea that the government is, by putting this rule into effect in Louisiana, is going to somehow stop Louisianan children or teenagers or whatever from accessing porn. I mean, I remember, I don't know what your guys' history was, but I remember when I was in like 5th grade in the 19...
You mean my search history? No, I'm just kidding.
No. In like pre-internet, at least, in the 1980s, some friend of mine brought a Playboy magazine onto the school bus, and I explicitly remember sliding that thing under the bus. So like the bus driver wouldn't see it, like under the seats. We were sliding it back and forth and just, looking through somebody's Playboy magazine. And, that's tame compared to what you can get on the internet today. But, where there's a will, there's a way.
It amazes me how Republicans... they get the gun thing for the most part. They're like, yeah, you can't ban guns. People are going to get them somehow. But then with stuff that's like super abstract or way easier to smuggle or, get to somebody, like digital pornography or drugs or something, it's like, oh yeah, we could get rid of that though. It's just kind of a weird disconnect they have.
Ian, I challenge you or anybody else out there to use this AI art that you can have on your computer to get these representatives in Louisiana.
Make porn of the representatives. Yes. I mean, obviously you could do it with Photoshop before, right? Like you take an image of a naked girl and then you put, some state rep's face on it. But I think the AI can do a better job, right? Unless you're a pro, and you are a pro, Joe, at doing graphics. So like if you know what you're doing, you can make it pretty good. But the AI is like, it's really good and it's fast at making pictures. So it's probably a lot better on average. But you make a great point, Reed. These Republicans, these people that are although to be fair, it was a Democrat that signed the bill. So Republicans and Democrats want to quote unquote protect children. The idea that they can somehow prohibit this stuff is, I mean, they're not banning it outright, which of course they would easily be challenged on something like that under free speech grounds. But this whole thing is it's just pure posturing. It's just going to make these politicians be able to say, look what I did, I care about children, and so they can get reelected. This isn't going to actually stop young people.
I can see young people like on the border towns of Louisiana just traveling a couple miles over the border into the next town, this next state.
It's like buying fireworks if you live in Massachusetts coming up here.
It's like, where are you going, Billy? Oh, I'm just going to the next state. Be right back.
There's a little bit more here. So it was introduced by Representative Lori Schegel, who recently supported legislation that banned transgender athletes from competing on girls' and women's sports teams in Louisiana. According to local news outlet WAFB, she also works as a counselor who sees patients for a sex addiction treatment. She said this, quote, pornography is destroying our children, and they're getting unlimited access to it on the internet. And so if the pornography companies aren't going to be responsible, I thought we need to go ahead and hold them accountable, she said. And it's just like, look, I may agree. Like, I don't think a pornography addiction is a good thing. I think that's,
any addiction's bad.
Yeah, well, any addiction for sure. And this one is, something that you can pour a lot of time into and money or whatever, and that's not a good thing. But banning it isn't going to solve the problem. Restricting it isn't going to solve the problem. It never has. And in fact, same thing with guns and drugs. If you drive that stuff underground, then it gets really scary. Right?
Yeah, I can imagine how sort of twisted it's going to get in the underground when it comes to porn.
Given how twisted it is not
right
being
now.
Underground.
Yeah.
Well,
how much worse it will get.
Well, look, I mean, you want a good example of this, look at Japan, for instance, where they have more restrictions on that sort of thing, and you get the tentacle porn stuff, right?
Yep.
It's wild.
There's no evidence, according to Vice, that sex addiction affects one's brain in the same ways that addiction to substances does, for example. Online porn and sex addiction have been controversial topics for decades, and it's been blamed, they say erroneously, for everything from mass shootings to sexual assault. Similar age verification proposals have been made in Australia, as well as in the UK, where the Online Safety Bill has been debated, modified, killed, and revived, all since 2021. Sex workers have denounced this and similar attempts at overbroad age verification. They say they're harmful to their livelihoods and represent an attack on the industry as a whole. In December, Republican Senator Mike Lee from Utah introduced the Interstate Obscenity Definition Act the IODA, which seeks to, quote, establish a national definition of obscenity that would apply to obscene content that is transmitted via interstate or foreign communications. Because apparently we don't have a definition of obscenity yet. After all of these years.
It's subjective.
It is, isn't it?
I hope some kid challenges this.
As he also introduced the shielding children's retinas from egregious exposure on the net, or the Screen Act, which would require
absurd.
I knew it was going to be some crazy acronym.
Yeah, of course. Which would require porn sites to use age verification technology. So basically, this Utah senator, Mike Lee, has proposed a national version of what has now passed in Louisiana.
So disappointing from him, because he's one of the few Republicans that's occasionally pretty good on stuff. And I don't know, he is just a Republican.
Well, right. I mean, that's the problem with Republicans. They're good on some things, like some economic freedoms, but when it comes to the economic freedom of pornographers and people, distributing adult content, well, no, you don't get that. Oh, you want to have the economic freedom to sell weed? Well, you can't have that.
It's actually funny because one of the things that spurred me into coming back to New Hampshire was, I was living out in Utah, and Utah is just so conservative about this stuff. And it's not that it affected me so much, like with the alcohol or anything, but they just had like these really tight restrictions. And so after the last 2 years with everything that's been going on, instead of, saying, hey, maybe we should reassess and be a little bit more freedom oriented because everything is just, so ridiculous, they just doubled down, and then they were actually drafting a bill to try to ban pornography from mobile devices.
Wow.
And then around this time in New Hampshire, they were voting on whether or not we should be allowed to secede from the union. And I was just like, man, we're just not
the priorities are completely different.
Yeah, it's wild.
So
I've heard of people gotten their their porn site logins hacked and been revealed publicly that look at this, look what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Well, if this is requiring a bunch of people to sign in, now you're just getting a record of everyone. I challenge I don't want to you guys any law breaking, but there's a challenge that could happen, which would be any hackers out there that want to look into all these reps that got this passed in Louisiana, see if any of them are logged in.
Oh yeah, of course they are.
You know it.
But do they verify their age? Do they dox themselves? Do they KYC themselves on these sites? Right? Are they hypocrites before the law got passed?
Yeah, you make a good point, Joe, that there's a database. Even though Pornhub is saying they're not connecting their data at the time that the verification is going on, whoever these third parties are, according to the company here, it's All Pass Trust and LA Wallet. These are the companies that are doing the third-party verification. They've got some kind of records. There's records of everybody that's done the scan of the ID or whatever hoop jumping that they got to jump through to do this stuff. It's on file there. And whether it's a hacker or just some sort of do-gooder on the inside or whatever that just releases these files, that information could absolutely come out at some point and violate many people's privacy.
There could be a wave of people going to the DMV to just get IDs, just to get on some porn websites.
I think most people probably have IDs already. But.
Most people, but let's just say that you don't drive and you don't ever have a reason. Homeless people, blah, blah, blah.
So I guess we'll see what happens to this on a national level. I don't know what the current status is of this shielding children's retinas from egregious exposure on the net, which again would require it'd be very similar to the law that's already been worked on in the UK, where if you run a porn site, you got to have age verification.
Yeah, I went to public school and they showed nudity to us for educational purposes.
Really?
Whatever. Yeah. And I was like,
you talking about like sex ed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Weren't those just drawings though? Did they actually show you nude?
No, we saw
photos?
we saw a full nude. We had.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they changed it since I was in school. I guess
so. I wasn't too far after you, I guess.
What about you, Reed? What was? Did they show you any actual nudity in government school?
I don't remember seeing any. I mean, we had sex ed, but I don't remember any graphic nudity of any sort.
It was very subtle, but it wasn't like full detailed type things.
The What this all really comes from ultimately is the sort of the Puritanism of the United States, the idea that sex is bad, okay? You know, that it's a danger to have somebody be exposed to naked people or whatever. And obviously, you know, I don't agree with a lot of what goes on in Europe necessarily, but you hear a lot of the stories about just being on the street in Europe. It's not that uncommon to see somebody topless or to see somebody full nude,
right,
you know, on the streets or on television or whatever there. And it's just like, so what? I don't get and we're seeing this now with all this insanity over drag shows right now, where people are losing their minds. There are protesters and counter protesters now outside of drag shows, and it's like these people that are against these drag shows, it's like they want to put people in prison for taking their kids to a drag show. And I cannot understand it, especially the ones that call themselves libertarians. I don't get.
These protests are giving them attention. You know,
of course they are.
So you keep protesting, you keep creating the outrage outside. You're going to be the focus, and then people are going to be like, no, there's going to be more defense to it, and it's because you're highlighting it. You know, just ignore it. These people are going to do it no matter what, regardless.
Right.
Like,
you can't push back and make it disappear. You can't push back and stop them from happening. So what's the point of this?
And I just want to make another point is that, like, you know, not just like the word censorship, but sheltering kids from things. They tend to slingshot after they become of age.
You want to find out what you missed out on. Right?
Yeah, it's like, oh, wow, I didn't see this movie. Now I want to watch all these horror movies, right? And it's because the parents wouldn't let them watch it. And it's like now they become obscured to it. And it's just exactly what's going to happen in this sense, too. Like some kids may be like, oh, wow, I found some porn. It's boring now.
Yeah.
But now you're telling them no, and now
dangerous.
They're going to be like, yes, I want it because they keep telling me no. And
well, that's the forbidden fruit aspect, and it applies to drugs as well, right? Like, oh, you can't smoke that marijuana, Billy. You know, it's really dangerous. You know?
Yeah.
Well, now you want to know why not.
Well, I think the other thing that happens is all nudity becomes sexual, you know, or sexualized or something through the Puritanism that you're talking about. Like I don't know, nudity, like if you're going swimming in a river in the middle of the woods or something, like if there's like if I was with a bunch of friends hiking or something, I would do that type of thing. And some people get really weirded out by it. And to me, that was just kind of weird. It's like, there's nothing sexual about jumping in a river without your clothes on. I just don't want to hike in my wet clothes afterward or whatever.
It's just being naked. It's not sexuality, and you're absolutely right. It is such a prudish kind of viewpoint to say that, you know, some woman walking around topless is trying to titillate in sort of a sexual manner, and it's not true at all. It's like, it's a hot day. I don't feel like wearing a shirt. That's it. That's all. She's not rubbing herself in front of a child or whatever. You know,
no, there's respectful methods and there's disrespectful methods. You know, like I admit, I go skinny dipping every year. I love it. I fully enjoy it. Actually, most of last year, most of my bathing happened in the river. Okay, that's how I did it. I did it nude, and there was no one around. When someone did come around, I ducked down and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" Until they got out of my view, and I would come back out.
Well, and was that because you were embarrassed, or you just didn't want them to potentially, you know, feel awkward?
Yeah, I don't want to make anyone awkward, and you know, never know, you get one of those super conservative or wicked lefties, and then they call in the cops on me because my woohoo came out for a moment out of the water, and oh my god, now I'm a sexual predator or some baloney like that.
Now, Joe, I don't think you were at Porkfest this year, right?
No,
or last year.
Not very long.
Reed, were you there for the whole thing?
For most of it.
Did you hear any of the controversy there over the naked people?
I didn't hear controversy. Aren't there always naked people there?
Yeah.
This year there may have been a few more than previous years. At least I saw more of them. The one day that I was there was maybe like 6 or 8 guys that were playing frisbee out on one of the backfields or whatever, and there was kids running around playing tag nearby. And you know what? Everything was totally fine.
Yeah.
No one. It didn't matter. But apparently some people weren't fine with it because the more conservative types that attend this liberty event, because they come there too sometimes. they got all upset about it, and they had to make a big deal about it and start complaining about it after the event was over, and just make a lot of noise about this non-issue. Like there was so much misinformation as well. Like they were lying. Like some of them were lying about some of these guys, like claiming that one of them had an erection in front of their child, which wasn't true apparently.
They're just being jealous
at all. And it's just like, if you don't want your kids to see that kind of thing, maybe don't bring them to a freedom festival.
I believe it was marked on a map that this is the nudist area.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they should have known better if they went to this event.
Yeah, and these guys are pretty respectful. I suspect that if they said that they would keep their nudity to one area, that they would probably not just walk around naked the whole time.
Now, I've seen moments at PorcFest that have been kind of, in my opinion, a little disrespectful. And things happen.
Naked people, you mean?
Not just naked people, but full-on acts in public. Well, I mean, it's not public because the whole place is private. But
like, what are you talking about? Sex acts?
Sex acts, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I have seen it. And I was like, all right, I'm no longer hungry because I just...
Oh, my God. I'm surprised.
Well, first off, they weren't attractive.
Well, of course not. Almost never.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I don't know about what happened at PorcFest because
this was late night.
I wasn't there or whatever. But I think there is a way to be respectful about nudity and disrespectful about it. I mean, I would never be nude around kids. It's just something I wouldn't do. And if there's like I don't know, there's some instances where it wouldn't be weird if they're family members or something, and you're all like, if your dad and his sons are going swimming in the river or something, then it's like different. But I don't know. The problem is we've just lost our common sense. Everything's gone, like in both directions. Whether it's like you're in a locker room and you're just taking a shower with the football team, which shouldn't be weird at all. But then at the same time, like you're talking about the drag shows, I don't think people should go to prison. But I do think bringing your kids to a drag show is really, really weird. And we seem to have lost that that connection to the guardrails where, it used to seem like people just kind of knew what was respectful, what was too in your face, and it was not a big deal. And now we've just completely lost touch with it. But
no, I agree.
I will say this about the drag shows. Bonnie and I went to one in Keene that happened in September, and there was maybe one person there who was less than 12 or 11 or something like that. There was a kid that somebody had brought to this drag show, and to the drag show's credit, it did say on the flyers and such, this is an adult, show for adults. It's not, like some kids show or whatever. But in the same way that like adults can bring their kids to an R-rated movie, in many cases there's much worse things that are happening on the screen in an R-rated movie. If that's the way your family is and you're open to that sort of thing, it's not my place to judge, right? You do you. It's your kids. Some people might think it's dangerous to bring your kids to church as well. There's more coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
The easiest thing in the world for a reader to do is to stop reading, according to the late, great Barney Kilgore, who became managing editor of the Wall Street Journal in 1941 and grew the paper's circulation from 33,000 to 1 million by the 60s. And he'd be pleased to know that his paper is one of the few that people now pay to read online. Someone else pre-internet who realized that attention is fragile? Motown Records founder Berry Gordy. In the early 60s, when his label dominated the charts, he'd bring a dozen real people into the Hitsville, USA studios and audition songs. And he'd ask, if you were down to your last dollar, would you spend it on this record or would you buy a sandwich? Today, attention span seems like an oxymoron. For tips on cutting through the clutter, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in Congress, has failed yet again to be elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. Despite making fresh concessions to hardline right-wingers, the Republican Party is deadlocked, with far-right members of Congress continuing to block Mr. McCarthy's path to victory. At one point today, Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida even voted for former President Donald Trump to become Speaker of the House. From FSN's Washington Bureau, Nick Harper with more.
Reports are that McCarthy has offered sizable concessions to the group of 20 hardline Republicans who continue to vote against him. Another candidate may need to be found, and with the Constitution not saying that it has to be an elected sitting member of the House, Donald Trump has been suggested as the person the party could rally around.
In other news, Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered a 36-hour ceasefire in Ukraine to mark Russian Orthodox Christmas. The authorities in Kyiv say they will not observe the ceasefire, accusing Russia of engaging in a cynical trap. Yuri Sak is an advisor to Ukraine's Minister of Defense.
We don't believe a word that comes out of the mouth of people from the leadership of Russia. So what they have done now is a cheap, almost inhumane propaganda trick for their own domestic audiences.
Meanwhile, France has agreed to send several light tanks to Ukraine to support the country as it continues to battle Russia. The announcement of the tank delivery follows a phone call between French President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Mexican forces in Sinaloa have arrested the son of jailed drug lord Joaquin Guzman, also known as El Chapo. Ovidio Guzman Lopez, also wanted on drug trafficking charges, was arrested after a violent confrontation early on Thursday that saw a civilian airliner damaged by gunfire as it was preparing for takeoff. There are to be no surprises when Prince Harry's memoir hits bookshops next week. A series of leaks have revealed that the Duke claims Prince William, his brother and heir to the throne, physically assaulted him during a row over Meghan Markle. He claims that he tried cocaine at the age of 17, claims that he killed 25 people while serving with UK forces in Afghanistan, and describes Prince William as his arch nemesis. Trying to keep up with it all, royal correspondent Peter Hunt.
The most striking of many, 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 many striking sentences was an account of Prince Charles, now the King, talking to his sons at the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, where Charles said, "Don't make my final years a misery." And it's pretty clear from just that one sentence just how difficult this has been behind the scenes, and now it is no longer behind the scenes, but we are all experiencing it and learning about it through these excerpts in advance, as you say, of the book actually itself appearing.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, catching up today with the latest developments in Myanmar. The ruling military junta there says it's releasing more than 7,000 prisoners under an amnesty as the country marks 75 years of independence from Britain. But the move comes just days after a court extended the jail sentence for democracy figurehead and Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi. She was arrested almost 2 years ago as her National League for Democracy was about to form a majority in the country's assembly. Graham Stewart is a Myanmar expert and deputy editor of The Critic magazine.
Releases of this kind are often announced on Myanmar's Independence Day. Most of them, those who've been incarcerated for relatively minor crimes and misdemeanors. A few might be said to have been released for political reasons, but there's no suggestion that a wide array of National League for Democracy politicians are going to be released under any form of amnesty. No suggestion that Aung San Suu Kyi, who's just had her sentence increased again, 33 years in detention, now set out for her. So we shouldn't see this announcement as in any way special.
And reflecting that, the Indonesian government, now chairing the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, is coming under increasing pressure to take a tougher line against the military rulers in Myanmar. The main news again. Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in Congress, has failed again to be elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. Ukrainian officials are dismissing Vladimir Putin's promise of a 36-hour ceasefire in the conflict as a cynical ploy. And leaks abound about Prince Harry's memoir, in which he alleges, among other things, that his brother William, heir to the throne, physically attacked him, and he also reveals taking cocaine at the age of 17. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
It's a landmark day in the March for Equality here in America. Congress passed the Casinos for Fairness Act today, which gives every mistreated group in America the right to open a casino.
It worked with Native Americans. It will work for the rest of the country. If our society has kept you down, you will get a casino to pull yourselves back up.
Veterans will also have the right to open a casino as a replacement for costlier benefit programs.
I think it'd be nice to have a casino. I mean, I'd rather still be able to walk, but, you know.
While the majority of the country is hailing the Casino Act as a step forward, many Native Americans are objecting to the law.
We are still the most disadvantaged group in America. So all that we ask is that we be allowed to open whorehouses and start legally selling cocaine.
The bill raised the question of whether immigrants should be allowed to own casinos. After much debate, the legislature decided that they would not, but they will be able to sell sliced mango on the street without a vendor license.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. We continue here. You can bring up whatever you want as we kick off the second hour of the program. You can bring up anything that's on your mind. The number for you is 603-283-6160, especially if you are one of these people that wants to crack down on the pornography industry. And we just read a story out of Louisiana that there's now a law that says that every website, purportedly, I guess, in the U.S., because it'd probably be hard for them to enforce outside of the U.S., which is a whole other thing. Like, how are they going to enforce this on, European websites or African websites or whatever? But every, porn site, basically, or any site with over 33.3% of its content that is lewd and lascivious, etc., has to have an age verification system put into place. And there's now a proposal that something like that will be done on the national level as well. Whether that passes or not, I don't know. But in Louisiana, at least, which is, of course, a prison colony, basically. I mean, it's one of the most restricted places in the United States. They arrest more people there for, victimless crimes, marijuana possession, things like that. It is not a place to live if you care about personal freedoms. But it was a bill signed by the Democratic governor there. So clearly it's a bipartisan issue. And again, whether this becomes a national level restriction still remains to be seen. But if you're somebody who supports that, I definitely would like to hear from you. The number, if you want to join us here at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. It just seems like, no matter what you do, that cat is out of the bag as far as pornography is concerned. I mean, you couldn't restrict it in the 1980s or in the 1970s or whatever, when it was just in magazine and VHS form, and now it is even less controllable than it's ever been. By the way, with you tonight, it's Ian,
Joa,
and Reed Coverdale.
Indeed. So, do you guys have any more comments on that, or should we move on?
We can move on.
I'm good with moving on.
I'll branch it over.
Yeah, what do you got, Joa?
Well, maybe in the future you could broadcast your porn through the energy of your body. And so I'm going to read this article from studyfinds.org. So it says 6G wireless technology could use humans as a power source. The study explains.
Is this something straight out of the Matrix?
I was going to say, using humans as a power source. I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can already do this and practice it. Some people say that your cell phone has a better signal when you hold it. versus like putting it down. Your key fob for your car, if you were to just use your hand, it's not going to be as powerful. Say you're at a distance from your car and you really want to lock in and you want to walk back, you could put it up to your belly, you could put it up to your cheek, and the water in your body is going to amplify it.
It helps radiate the
That's
signal.
right. Yeah. So you're using your body as an antenna. Or like if you have a radio, you ever touch the antenna on your radio and it makes
helps.
That's exactly what's going on. And so this is really odd and strange. All right, so I'll read the article here. Amherst, Mass. 5G wireless technology is just starting to take off worldwide, but a new study is already speculating on the future of 6G. Now, this doesn't mean like it's going to be. I'm just speculating here. It's not likely it's going to be more powerful. It's just that they're using a new method. So 6G is just sixth generation.
Correct.
Right. And then researchers from the University of Massachusetts Amherst say, unlike older technology, 6G could end up using people as antennas. And this is not unheard of because your watches already do this. So,
you mean like the smartwatch things?
Yeah, smartwatches. They're using it to amplify a signal to your phone.
Oh, see, I've never had the smartwatch, so I don't know a lot about it.
Yep. There's connectors on it that, read biometrics and that all these other sort of things. But specifically, 6G telecommunications could possibly take advantage of visible light communication, or VLC, not the player, the video player, which is like a wireless version of fiber optics. Right now, fiber optics are incredibly thin glass or plastic strands to transmit information on flashes of light. These wires are extremely small, but also extremely fragile. And I know because there was an internet outage yesterday in Manchester because some truck hit a pole, severing the pole like completely in half, and the fiber optics were destroyed, and they had to replace it. It took them all day.
Thank goodness we have the government out there forcing us to have poles instead of doing underground wire burial.
Right?
I guess it's keeping you employed to some extent, right, Reed?
Well, not the fiber optic side, but the pole side.
The poles, yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, because if they just buried these cables and they got rid of the pole situation, it would solve so many issues.
It's not like we have earthquakes here that could disrupt these
Well,
lines.
I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into burying everything. I mean,
No
eventually.
doubt.
What?
I said, no doubt there's a lot of work.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
but I mean, as far as like branches taking down lines or cars running into poles and that sort of thing, you wouldn't have that problem anymore. Although, when you got to go and run
when
new
you gotta
wires.
fix stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, government, think about the danger of poles.
What's that?
Hey, government, there's a danger out there. It's telephone poles. We need to get rid of them. I'm just trying to just like
get a
signal them
hashtag
little
going,
bit.
ban telephone poles.
Too many people have died.
Think of the children. Ban telephone poles.
The UMass Amherst teams say they have created a low-cost and innovative way of harvesting waste energy from VLC using the human body as an antenna. Their invention can recycle waste energy to power wearable devices and possibly larger electronics as well. And then they quote, VLC is quite simply and interesting, says Jia Zhang, professor of information and computer sciences of UMass Amherst and University of Release. Instead of using radio signals to send information wirelessly, it uses the light from LEDs that can turn on and off up to 1 million times per second.
I'm curious to know how this is going to work. I mean, because if it's light, wouldn't you have to have a direct line of sight in order for it to actually work? Like a radio signal can penetrate through a wall, but a light...
I don't know.
Do that.
They know something we don't, I guess.
Yeah, there's obviously something here I'm not getting, but we'll continue here in just a moment. Let's go to this caller. You're on Free Talk Live. What's your name?
Nate.
Nate, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm from Louisiana.
I'm sorry.
I wouldn't call it the most unfree state in the union.
It's up there though. It's bad, man.
Nah, I mean if you look at it through a gun rights point of view or a pro-life point of view or something of that nature, we're one of the best states in the union, in my opinion. As far as like the age verification thing, I'm not for it or against it. So here's my thing. I'm thinking like, why would I mean, if somebody is concerned about their privacy, why would they even have? I don't have a smartphone. I don't have internet on my phone. I don't have internet. I mean, if I'm concerned about my privacy, why would I get hung up on possibly saving a few teenagers from stumbling upon some images that could actually harm them? How is, I guess let me pose the question this way. How is making a website verify someone's age, how is that taking away someone else's life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness? If you could explain how it is, I would think about it, but I don't see how.
First of all, I'd like to answer that question, but I will tell you are absolutely wrong. Louisiana is the state with the highest incarceration rate in the United States, according to usnews.com, at least from 2017, and I'm pretty sure that it's been that way for a long time. It is referred to as the world's prison capital, incarcerating 816 per every 100,000 people as of 2014. So you guys are definitely...
Well, could that be because we also have the highest crime rate in New Orleans, and so maybe it's not that...
No, it's because Louisiana... A lot of cities have high crime rates. It's because Louisiana has a lot of stupid prohibitions that are being, absolutely cracked down upon. Things like, marijuana possession will get you a prison sentence there.
No, sir. That law was passed 1 or 2 years ago, where now it's a ticketable offense. It is no longer a crime to possess marijuana.
I'm glad to hear that. So you guys finally changed that one law, huh? Okay, you guys.
Called me wrong. Well,
he called you out, Ian.
Okay, so you guys finally changed that one law. Well, now if you run a website that doesn't do an age verification, they're going to put you in prison probably for that too. I mean, you asked why that's infringing upon someone's liberty. It's infringing upon the website operator's liberty, because if you want to have a free website that anyone can access without having to pay money to some service to verify the ages of the people that come to your website, and you're being threatened by this Louisiana crime syndicate now.
That's a fair point. I didn't think about it from a private business standpoint.
Okay.
As far as okay, now they have to pay to make this happen.
Yeah, it just doesn't come for free. There's no free solution to doing age verification. You got to hire a company for that.
Yeah, that's thought provoking. I'll think on that.
Okay.
But I will echo this. Anybody who's out there, if you really care about your privacy, you would get rid of your smartphone. Number one.
Well, yeah.
Don't even have a television. Really, it's getting so intrusive that really technology at this point is not your friend. It's not something. It's kind of like one of the founders said about government. It's really becoming a force, a dangerous fire that you really got to be careful with, and it's best to keep it at a distance.
Essentially, what they would have to do, I'm not trying to give them an idea, but this is probably what they're contriving, right? Is that they are going to have to monitor everyone's computer, right? Because how could you censor it? Like, people, just for instance, go on the dark web to find these things that don't require age verifications. Or I guarantee you that there's going to be sites that are not, listed by the government that is requiring this sort of new law. It'll be impossible for this to happen. There'll be some forum out there, some obscure website that doesn't require age verification, and I don't know. It just seems so absurd. And the only way they could do that is have it like the net nanny type thing, and the kid is going to have to sign in, and now the net nanny, which maybe has actual eyes on it, it's just going to be so weird, so intrusive. Kids are going to lose complete privacy because of this. Not because they're going on porn sites, but because they are a kid. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be, everything's going to be tracked by them.
Nate, anything else you want to share?
Yeah. I could tell you this, that New Orleans, if you're walking around in New Orleans, you have a higher chance of getting carjacked or shot than in any other city in the United States. So that tells me that more people will be incarcerated if you live in that area. It's just a fact. Now that probably means that there's more fatherless homes. There's more whole. He said, I've given you a republic if you can keep it. And he said we're to be self-governed. What does that mean? That you have a relationship with God, the Father, Jesus Christ, and that keeps you from taking away the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of your neighbor. And as a society drifts away from God and morality and values, then the government by nature will come in with laws to restrain the people that are now treating their neighbor ill will. So,
Well, I think that
that's
the problem with people falling away from God is that the government is the
in the state.
antithesis. The government is the antithesis of goodness. The government is the antithesis of love for your neighbor and for forgiveness and treating people
and so
right.
is social media, and so is the internet, and so is television.
Those are just
aren't good
tools.
things.
The internet's just a tool, man. You can use it for
When
good.
you go to sleep tonight, ask yourself if the devil would rather you have internet in your life or have you lived your life with.
Wait a second.
No,
Yeah, but see what the difference between the two is that one forces you to do something.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, you have the choice.
So I got an honest question for you, man.
Tell me that you can look yourself in the mirror and say that the internet is a good thing for you to have. It's to teach your grandchildren how to use. Well, you know what? At least I would challenge everybody out there.
Yeah, I can
Literally
do that easily. It's because I'm not an evil person. But Reed, you had a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I'm not. This isn't a gotcha. It's just a serious question. So I do think you need a virtuous society to have no government. I don't think just getting rid of the government gets rid of all your problems. I do think you need people who respect property rights and respect each other's space and everything. But New Hampshire, Ian, I don't know if you know the stat off the top of your head, but it is at times the most atheist state in the country. It depends on the year. I don't know if it was last year.
I believe the term is unchurched. It wouldn't surprise me if there are a lot of atheists here as well, but there's a large number of people who are quote-unquote unchurched, meaning that they may actually have a religion, they just don't go to a church. So there's that too.
And there's also a lot of them don't identify with a religion too. Isn't that pretty high in New Hampshire as well?
It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, the unchurched people may have their own personal beliefs, but they're not per se a part of something.
And then ironically, we have the lowest homicide rates.
Yeah. So, I do think we need a virtuous society, but I think that a lot of religious people tend to conflate virtue with religion because you can have very religious, Louisiana is very religious, but New Hampshire isn't. And the amount of violence and crime that you're talking about in Louisiana is way higher. So it's just an interesting thing to think about.
What do you think about that, Nate?
I think that if New Hampshire got a big city like New Orleans, you guys would know better than me, but the founding fathers there was at least two quotes that I know of that they basically were saying in the city, it's nothing good is going to come out of people living on top of each other. And if New Hampshire had a major city, over time, fatherlessness would prevail and crime would and if you brought the average temperature down. I'm not going to go burglarize somebody's car when it's 0 degrees with a north wind at 30 miles an hour. I'm not going to go make a baby with the neighbor's daughter, when it's 30 degrees, that's below.
I actually like the argument you're making because a lot of we got to use this in the future, Ian, because a lot of libertarians complain about the cold and they don't want to move to New Hampshire. But you've just made an excellent point that cold makes you a more peaceful person because it's uncomfortable to go commit crime out in the cold.
Nate,
I like that. I'm going to remember that.
Thanks for the call, Nate. I do appreciate hearing from you.
You don't want to be robbed? Come here in the wintertime.
Dude, that's such a great argument. I've never thought of that before, but definitely going to use it.
Let's go to Major Payne. He's on the line in Michigan. Go ahead, Major.
Yeah, that's why the Scandinavians and Norwegians moved up to Montana and Michigan and whatnot. They'd always marry their cousin because that was the closest girl around.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you're ruining our argument for us.
You don't want to travel more than 15 miles in the cold to go a courting, boy. I'll tell you what.
By the way, before you go on, Major, I did pull up NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and they have a real handy state-by-state rundown. They keep it up to date, right? Because the last guy that was on the phone, he said, they decriminalized marijuana in Louisiana. You can't get arrested for possession, he said. And apparently that's somewhat true in that now if you have less than 14 grams of marijuana on your person and you get caught in Louisiana, they will obviously take it and they will issue you a fine, but there's no possibility of jail time. However, it has only been decriminalized in that you can't go to jail. It's still a misdemeanor on your record, whereas here in New Hampshire there's the $100 fine and it's only a violation. So it's still worse down there, and it's 14 grams there. I think it's like 21 or something like that. Here I think it's 3/4 of an ounce.
Yeah, 3/4 of an ounce, I believe.
And then further, if you have more than 14 grams and upwards of 2.5 pounds, that is still going to put you in jail for 6 months. So I mean, it's better in Louisiana. I will give him that, but it's still a misdemeanor, even if you get caught with a gram. Anyway, Major, go ahead with your thoughts.
If I remember right, Ann Arbor was the first place to have the $100 ticket.
Yeah, that was a long time ago too, right? Like decades.
Yep. Yeah, we had the hash bash there in Ann Arbor, and it used to be cool until the cops started cracking down. You know, they wouldn't bother you if you were just smoking reefer, but if you had a beer or even threw a French fry wrapper on the ground, they was on you like ducks on a June bug.
Wow. I've never heard that one. All right, what else, man?
Well, couple things. I mean, you guys are talking about the telephone poles and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, you know, the tree huggers that jump around, think of all the pine trees we could save, man. But are they going to think about all the trees that are going to have their root base ripped up, putting all that infrastructure underground? I bet you we'd lose more trees than we'd save.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a huge undertaking. I mean, it makes sense in some areas, but we definitely are. I mean,
I'm particularly talking about the city.
No, I hear you, but even in the city, like then you got to get it under the sidewalks, and you got to tear up all the roads, and you got all the underground utilities you already have under there, like sewer and gas, and I mean, it's where it works. It's great because then you don't have it blocking your view, you don't have it getting damaged in the storm, but it is like it's very expensive.
Wait a second here. Wait a second.
Ground boring, you know, they've come a long way with going underneath the roads and whatnot, but still, I think it would raise more.
No, I agree with Reed. I mean, it would be a huge undertaking and a huge expense to try to do it to every existing line. However, if you were building like a new neighborhood and you're putting in new, you got to have a cost involved in putting something new in anyway. At that point, you might as well go underground and make it, somehow easily able to access for. There's probably solutions that the market has come up with to where you could, if you need to run new cables through there, you can set it up.
Really, one of you guys brought up why the Indians lost the war, and it was because they couldn't fight as a cohesive unit. It was all about the glorification of the individual warrior. They got more street cred, so to speak, for counting coups than they did for killing you.
I mean, don't you think the fact that the Europeans had guns was a factor as well?
Oh, it most certainly helped, but the Indians couldn't unite.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't recognize that they were against an enemy. I mean, the French hired them.
Yeah, a lot of them did.
Fight the French. Hell, the English were responsible for scalping. It's like, bring me.
No, that was the French. French are scalpers.
Okay, well, my bad, but still, it was the French and Indian Wars there.
Yep. And
England was definitely up on that one.
Yep.
I was going to say, back to the poll thing, is that I know, Reed, you're like a professional in this sense, but, I think that ultimately they're already cutting down a lot of trees to put in poles, probably more so, because you got to think that, you have to have a certain sort of space requirement to put that pole up, and you don't want trees nearby because it could fall on the poles, and how we all see it. These, the tree crews going around and trimming the trees and tearing down and cutting down trees every year just to avoid them falling on poles.
That's true.
On the lines. Yeah. I think it would probably be better in one sense in the cities, because if you live in the city, you're already in a concrete jungle. Don't expect. Anyways.
Yeah. So when you run underground wire, it's not the same wire as what's hanging on the poles. So on the poles, you can have something that's like half an inch in diameter, and that can channel a lot of electricity. When it's underground, they're like 2 inches thick. They've got all this rubber coating. They've got like tons of copper in them and stuff. So
I just look at it as anywhere there's a sidewalk, is where the cable should be.
So the cost is, you're saying the cost of the wire itself is even higher
way
underground.
higher, yeah.
That's interesting. There's more coming up here. The number is 603-283. Thank you, Major, for the call. 603-283-6160. We got more Free Talk Live on the way.
Free Talk Live.
So, yeah, Mark, they did ban all foreign flags from being flown in the event that they are the only flag being flown. But nonetheless, I mean,
it's the flying of a flag?
$50 fine and 30 hours of community service.
That's dumb. This doesn't really even affect.
What do you think? This is the land of the free?
Most of the Mexican flags I see are CDs hanging from people's rear view mirrors, stickers.
I think we could qualify that.
That's not a flag.
It doesn't look like a flag. Got them colors on it.
No.
We're going to
It's a
charge you
CD.
$50 fine. $50. That's right.
That CD, what if the CD has music on it?
Don't matter. It's a flag.
It's not a flag. It's a CD.
If you're flying it
Clearly,
like a flag,
sir,
it's a flag, my friend.
It's not a flag. It's hanging from fishing wire from my rear view mirror.
Hanging equals flag.
No, hanging does not
flag
equal flag.
equals $50 fine. Pay up.
Well, I have
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The saga to vote in the next Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives continues, breaking records last set almost 165 years ago. Republican Kevin McCarthy has now lost 10 rounds of voting over 3 days, despite making major concessions to the group of hardliners in his party voting against him. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
It's another one for the history books. The last time the House failed to elect a Speaker on the first day of the new Congress was in 1923. Back then, things were decided in the 9th round of voting. But now, with more than 10 rounds of voting gone, this has become the most protracted Speaker election since 1859. It all means the House remains paralysed, unable to start work or even swear in new lawmakers until a Speaker is elected. McCarthy's detractors seem unwilling to rally behind him, despite concessions, and no other obvious candidate has been identified.
U.S. President Joe Biden announced on Thursday that he is expanding a program that accepts migrants from certain countries, but is also ramping up expelling those who attempt to cross the border illegally. The announcement comes alongside plans for the president to visit the border city of El Paso, Texas on Sunday, as his administration grapples with a surge of migrants and an overwhelmed immigration system. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Under this expanded program, the U.S. will accept up to 30,000 migrants per month from Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela, but only if they go through a formal process, which includes background checks and a sponsor. If they attempt to cross illegally, Biden says they will be expelled to Mexico. The president also announced that he will make a trip to the border city of El Paso, Texas on Sunday to meet with local officials and community leaders who have been on the front lines of a record number of attempted border crossings. This will be Biden's first trip to the border since becoming president, something Republicans and even some Democrats have criticized him for, claiming he's ignored the issue.
Increased job cuts by Amazon and Goldman Sachs might have caused another flat day on the U.S. markets. U.S. stocks ended the day lower on Thursday. FSN's Jody Jacobs has more from New York.
Another cloudy day on the U.S. markets as stocks sank on Thursday. The S&P 500 ended in the red, 1.17% lower, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average shed 340 points. The Nasdaq Composite took a beating, ending 1.47% lower. Filings for unemployment insurance fell 204,000, the lowest since September, according to the Labor Department. One of the U.S.'s major chains, Bed Bath & Beyond, might be a thing of the past. In a statement published before the markets opened, the company said bankruptcy might be a possibility.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Is Free Talk Live. And you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. Phones are open. You can bring up anything you want, your comments on whatever happens to be on your mind. We'd love to hear them. Also want to say thank you to Joseph Storm. He is a supporter of our AMPS program. That means that Joseph is contributing, and in his case, quite a bit. He's doing a platinum level, which is 5 times what we ask. We ask $5 a month. He's doing $25 per month to the AMP program. It stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. amps.freetalklive.com is where you can go to contribute there. We certainly appreciate it. And, with the new way that we're doing the show here, you're going to hear fewer advertisers. And you are hearing fewer advertisers on Free Talk Live. We've cut out 2 entire commercial breaks per hour from the show, and I think it's been a major positive change for the show so far. I think the shows have been more interesting. We've had a chance to get deeper into conversations. We're not constantly being interrupted. And we'd prefer to not interrupt for advertising either. So if you guys want to support the show directly, that'd be the best way to ensure that we can continue. Go to amps.freetalklive.com and do as Joseph Storm has done. You don't have to go to his level, but $5 a month, that's all we ask for. And you get some perks like access to the AMP-only podcast, where you get the full radio show without any recorded commercials in archive form through our Patreon. So once again, that's amps.freetalklive.com. Joe, you were telling us about some technology.
Yes.
It's Ian, Joa, and Reed here, by the way, tonight. But you were telling us about this, and I'd never heard of this before, VLC. So kind of like fiber optic cable that's a thin piece of glass down which light is transmitted, and that's how, if you've got fiber, quote-unquote, internet connection, and we do here at the studio, by the way, that's how you can get incredible bandwidth, which is what we have here. We got a gigabit connection at this studio, and it's relatively affordable compared to what you would have had to pay for a gigabit just, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So this is a similar kind of technology in that it is using light to transmit and receive, but it cuts out the wire. And so now they're talking about using this technology with the new 6G cell phone system.
I think it's better, instead of reading it, because I read it, it's better to kind of try to explain it in my own words.
All right.
And imagine this is like, there's all different devices in your home, and they all have different light sources, like say your microwave and the digital screen on that is putting a flicker, because it's LED. Now, that's very unique to your microwave. So if you wanted to say, oh, I put something in the microwave, and you walk away from it and you just wanted to turn it on, well, your device would match the frequency of that, and as long as it has a receiver to the light that you're sending out, and it could communicate back at you with the flicker of the light on the microwave, right? So it doesn't even require the light anymore. It could just be, well, it does require the light, but to receive you need a light source from somewhere else. You have to send something out, you need a light source from yourself. So it's hard to imagine, but it's a communication between these devices, right? That is just very, very small, minute sort of emission coming off of it.
Yeah, according to ScienceDirect.com, it says that the features of VLC include high bandwidth, no health hazard, right? Because there's long been a lot
You're already getting hit with the LEDs coming off your microwave.
Well, right, and there's long been a fear, whether it's justified or not, I don't know. There's been different studies about this, but there's long been the fear that having a cell phone, which is essentially a radio transmitter, right? Like even when you're not using your cell phone, it's still transmitting and receiving constantly.
Well, I'd be more afraid of the radiation off the battery versus like it actually transmitting. That'd be more concerning to me.
Well, the batteries ain't going away, but there's been a long concern about the radio transmission possibly, causing cancer, quote unquote. I don't think there's much evidence for it, but there's always been that fear. That certainly was one of the fears of 5G for a long time.
In the health version of this topic, it's wouldn't be any different. It'd probably be better in certain ways, but in the security or the privacy sense of this technology, it could be extremely concerning.
This isn't a radio transmitter. This is just light flashing.
Right. Well, yes, but you're putting off a frequency, and it could read that. They're saying that
the privacy. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like you're putting a frequency off. So imagine.
Well, you would encrypt it. It'd be encrypted.
Well, you can't encrypt your brain, Ian. Like what I'm saying is that your brain is throwing out frequencies, and if it could, like some device is reading the frequency off your brain, they're going to know what you're thinking.
Well, I mean, that's now you're talking about a completely different technology.
No, that's how
here.
obscure this is talking about here. And so you would basically wear just a simple copper wire, a ring or a copper bracelet, and you're putting off frequency, and you're creating that one little extra antenna of that, and it's like kind of broadcasting that out.
Wait. You're talking about the thing you would wear would be a VLC, a light transmitter, right?
No,
that's something else.
Yes, they're saying light is sort of how they were discovering this and how they are, it's a better method because it's a direct line. Let me explain. Let me read this part here. The team explains that the VLC systems experience significant leakage of energy. So it's not even LEDs, right? But because of LEDs,
they have LEDs,
right? But because of LEDs emit side channel RF signals, radio frequency signals, or radio waves. If scientists are able to harvest this RF energy, they can put it to use. So it's not even about light anymore. To turn this into reality, they design an antenna out of coil copper wire to collect leaked RF, radio frequency. From there, the biggest question is, what kind of object maximizes the collection of this energy? Your body, full of water, right? Researchers experimented with all sorts of surfaces and thicknesses of wire. After resting the coil against plastic, cardboard, wood, and steel, as well as phones and other digital devices turned on and off. First author Minaho Ku tried wrapping the coil around a human body. The results show people are actually the best medium for amplifying the coil's ability to collect leaked RF energy. Attaching the coil to a person collected up to 10 times more energy than just using a bare coil. That's basically what they're saying there.
Yeah, I kind of am seeing what you're saying about the technology. Obviously, I am not aware enough of exactly how all this stuff works. I suspect you aren't either, on what the proposal is or how this is going to interface with your cell phone or whatever into the future. But it sounds like they've got some sort of idea.
This tech is not old, but they're trying to like minimize the tech into a smaller and smaller device. Now, it's been said that when your hard drive runs, the spinning disk one, not the solid.
Sure, those are going out of style, though.
Right. The spinning ones, they put off a frequency which can be read from a distance, and someone can read what you're doing on your computer without actually having to plug in anything to your computer.
Another reason not to have one of those hard drives.
It's wild. Yeah. But
I don't know. I mean, how are you feeling about the 6G thing? You think you're going to get the bracelet?
I don't think we're going to have a choice. Like, that's not even going to... No, you only need a bracelet. They'll advance that technology where you have enough,
I think plenty of people would wear it. If cellular companies, Verizon or whoever, said, hey, all you got to do is wear this bracelet and it'll increase your signal on your cell phone by 10% or 100% or something like that.
What if your wedding ring is already doing it?
Well, who knows? But I think that you'd get a lot of people signing on for that, just because people are addicted to their cell phones, and they absolutely
can make it easier. They would.
If you could guarantee a signal in low signal areas by simply wearing some jewelry or something like that, I think most people would be for it.
It seems like even way more advanced technology than what we're even talking about right here.
It probably is. Yeah. We probably barely are scratching the surface on
this article. Certainly
the potential here. If you want to comment though, and we can't get too far into the weeds on how exactly the tech works, but for those of you out there that like I said, this is new to me. I mean, obviously, you mentioned during the break, I think, Joa, the idea of the old remote control for the television. That's infrared light, right? You can't see it, but there's a little light bulb in there, and it's flashing at infrared light, and so that's how that system works. And that it's very directional, right? Like you can't point that.
Line of sight.
Although you can point it at walls. I don't know if you've ever done that with like one of your remote controls. You can bounce the signal off a wall
if it has a little bit of sheen. Or something.
And it will come back. So I've done that before. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
That won't be required in the future. Just the frequency, the radio frequency that's coming off of that little bit of a signal when you press that button will be enough.
The number, if you want to join us, is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. I got some numbers here from Gallup. This is a big polling organization. They talked to Americans about what they're expecting for 2023. And yeah, it's not looking so good. people are not optimistic about the future, at least the immediate future. According to the story here, coming off of several challenging years, Americans are entering 2023 with a mostly gloomy outlook for the United States, as majorities predict negative conditions in 12 out of 13 economic, political, societal, and international arenas. When offered opposing outcomes on each issue, about 8 out of 10 U.S. adults think 2023 will be a year of economic difficulty, with higher rather than lower taxes, and a growing rather than shrinking budget deficit. More than 6 in 10, and I think they're realistic here, right? Like, they know. People know how difficult things are with inflation out there, and they know that even though the government's claiming it's quote-unquote slowing down, it's like 7-something% now instead of 8%, according to the official government numbers. That's not like gonna make people feel better. It's not gonna bring prices down at the grocery store. 7% just means the prices are still going up.
That's right.
They're just not going up at 8%. You know, and that's just the government number. We know they're just. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to fix this all, we just need to get a Republican House Majority Leader elected and let the Republicans do their thing, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, that's what they want you to believe. That's how they got people to vote for them, was by talking about inflation and, oh, well, we care. We're the ones with the solution. Even though they remember, Republicans, what happened in 2020 when Trump was still in office during COVID?
Well, to be fair, he was really busy draining the swamp and locking up the pedophiles, so he didn't have time, you know.
Yeah, he didn't time to read that bill. What was it, $6 billion? No,
trillions. 2.4 trillion.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he, like, right before he signed the bill, he was like, well, it's $6 billion, right? And they're like, no, it's trillion with a T. He's like, oh, I'd never signed anything with a T before.
And so he signed
it. And he just signs it. Like, come on, guys.
He's just
he signed two. He signed one for 2.7 trillion in March.
That's right.
And then he signed another one for 2.4 trillion in December. Well, he threatened to veto it first, and then eventually capitulated and signed it. So.
Yeah, and don't forget also, it was Republicans and Democrats who voted for those bills. I believe it was, if not unanimous, darn close to unanimous.
The first one, there were only like 3 dissenters.
Yeah.
And then the second one, there were like 40 out of 538. So yeah, not very good numbers.
Yes, the whole
Trump supporters are not doing that great either, because they obviously didn't do the insurrection right.
Oh yeah, can we talk about the insurrection at some point? We don't have to right now.
Sure, it's the anniversary. I mean, I'm just got the polling numbers here, so yeah. What do you got to say about it? I mean, it's almost the anniversary.
I mean, a lot of I make a huge deal out of January 6th, and a lot of people like wonder why, because they don't really get the joke or whatever. But this is a lot of people forget what was going on. So I actually wrote on Twitter on December 23rd of 2020, I said, let's go set up some guillotines outside the Capitol. And the reason I said that was because that was right when they had passed that $2.4 trillion bill, and they were just waiting for Trump to sign it. Or sorry, $2.4 trillion bill.
Wait, when was this happened that you made that post?
Right before Christmas Eve on December 2020.
Oh, okay, 2020. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so I was furious because this was a 5,500-page bill, $2.4 trillion. Most of it was going to the military and foreign countries and special interest groups, and nobody was raising hell about it. I was just like, come on, guys. Like, what the heck? This should be starting a revolution. And so I was trying to hype stuff up about it. And then 2 weeks later, all these guys do like rush into the Capitol, and they literally set up a guillotine outside the Capitol.
Non-functioning.
I know, but still, like, my thing with it is like, yes, this was a bit of it was kind of funny, and
it's street theater.
It was ridiculous.
Street theater.
But the representatives in Congress were terrified for like a solid 20 minutes that like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And I loved that. Like, I absolutely loved that. They were just terrified and they didn't know if they were going to make it out alive or whatever. And then
the photos of them cowering and like putting on those crazy masks.
I love it. It's so good. And then like on January 7th or 8th or something, Congress condemned the violence on January 6th. It's like, you guys are going to condemn the violence.
Did,
like,
were
you're
they
the
condemning
most violent people?
Yeah, I was going to say,
in
were
the
they
world.
condemning the cops that shot that woman to death?
No,
Is that
of course not.
Oh,
And then,
okay.
like a week after they condemned the violence, the U.S. government bombed Syria. So
yeah, hypocrites, right?
Of course.
Yeah, my whole thing has been like overblowing January 6th. I make all these jokes like January 6th was worse than World War II. It was worse than Hiroshima, whatever. Just because the media does that in a non-ironic way.
Yeah, I was
going
to say they literally are saying things like,
happened.
yeah, they're the people that believe January 6th was some sort of significant event. I mean, it had some significance, but obviously it wasn't an insurrection. That whole claim is ridiculous. But the ones that want you to believe that it was, they actually will make comparisons. I don't think I've heard World War II, but that just takes it to the next level. But
I say like January 6th was worse than an Amy Schumer joke. I take it to ridiculous extremes. You
know what was worse than the insurrection? The raid on Ian's house.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's pretty violent, pretty ridiculous.
More guns were involved, probably.
That's a fact. More Bearcats for sure. Let's go to Sydney on the line in Pennsylvania. Sydney, what's on your mind tonight?
Oh, hey guys, thanks for taking my call. I didn't want to derail that conversation. That was really good, actually. But I wanted to talk about something I think a lot of your audience will have heard about, those murders in Idaho.
Yeah, by the quote-unquote libertarian, the supposed libertarian mass murderer.
Yeah, I didn't hear about the libertarian thing, but I saw in the headlines that, he had this cross-country. A lot of people know about this case, so I hope I don't have to review it too much. But he had like a cross-country trip with his father, and then along the way, he got stopped twice by the police in, I believe it's Indiana, 10 minutes apart from each other. So he got pulled over by a county officer, and then he got pulled over by a state officer. And Fox News was reporting from a law enforcement source that's anonymous that the FBI had requested the local police department in the state and the county to pull him over so that they could, who knows what they were trying to do, but the source said to try to get a look at the guy's hands. So I just want to ask the question, if you're traveling down an interstate highway, can the police pull you over for any reason whatsoever?
Yeah, of course.
And then just lie to you about what that reason is?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they can.
Not morally.
Legally, it gets into
so the article is claiming that the FBI denies that they made that request. But now that I feel like that sort of tip came out, because obviously parallel construction is the thing, but now that we have this one case that's going to go to trial, if the FBI, there should be evidence somewhere of this connection between, these law enforcement sources and their request.
Well, yeah, the FBI is going to deny it because they're liars. I mean, I'll give you an example from our friend. His name is nobody these days, but he used to be Rich Paul a decade or so ago. And the FBI absolutely targeted Rich Paul through the local police department and the state police. They had the local cops do an investigation on Rich, and they set him up for selling weed. They actually let he sold weed. There's no doubt about that. But they captured a heroin dealer locally, and they flipped the heroin dealer. They told the heroin dealer, "Look, we'll drop all your charges for selling heroin if you help us bust this weed dealer," which is crazy, right?
That sounds crazy.
Doesn't make any sense, but it will make sense because what they wanted to accomplish was they wanted to get into the liberty movement. They wanted to have an agent. They wanted to have an informant.
So politically motivated.
Yeah, so they arrested Rich after he sold some weed to this other informant, the heroin dealer. And as soon as they brought Rich into the police station, FBI agent, Special Agent Phil Christiana was sitting there waiting for him. And Phil Christiana offered to Rich, said, "Look, we'll drop your charges. You're facing 80 to 100 years in prison here. How about we just drop your charges if you just agree to wear a wire into the Keene Activist Center?" And this would have been the equivalent of what goes on out in Manchester and the Seacoast, where there's some of these activist centers that we have. Keene had one for a time, and they really, really wanted to get an agent in there, and Rich told him no way. And so, then he went to trial and got found guilty and went to jail for a year because he refused to wear a wire. But in Rich's trial, because remember, Rich did not take a plea deal, so he had to go to trial. And this slime bag agent, Phil Christiana, was called in as a witness. And you had to read between the lines because he didn't actually admit to this. Like the wrong questions were asked or whatever. Like there wasn't a crystal clear ask of this question, but it seemed clear to me that the FBI put the local cops up to this. I mean, why else would he have been sitting in the police station waiting for this arrest to be made? So, yeah, they can lie to you. It's completely legal for them to lie to you, but if you lie to the FBI or any other federal agency, then they will charge you with a crime for that. So in the case that you're talking about where these people allegedly were pulled over at the behest of the FBI has no obligation to verify that story. It's an anonymous source, right, first of all, so they're not going to confirm or deny it. But secondly, the police can easily pull you over. All they have to do is just make something up. And
right. Well, I hope that the lawyer in this case is actually going to bring that up and maybe even bring those people into the trial, because it seems as though I'm not trying to defend this person at all. I don't really even know that much about the case, but it seems like the surveillance that across the lines in a couple of instances, that's one of them. Another one was going to his family's house and going through the family's garbage. So this is before there's an indictment, before there's a warrant search, and going through people's garbage to get their DNA.
You don't need
that's
I
legal.
want everybody to be aware of what these people do, and if they pull you over and they say, "I pulled you over for tailgating," that could be a total lie.
Yeah, one of the common ones is they'll pull you over and they'll claim that your light's out on your license plate holder, right? Like that's an easy one for them to claim, and it's a hard one for the individual to check. And I forget if it was one of your friends online, Joe, one of the channels that's out there, the First Amendment auditors. I don't know if it was the guy in Florida who he's got like the name of the channel is like what the cops always say. Here's the deal.
Oh, here's the deal.
I think it might have been him. But anyway, one of these online channels, they had a video of a dude that actually went. He was pulled over, and the cop claimed that he pulled him over for, or actually I think it was a female cop. The cop claimed that she pulled him over because his plate light was out, and he was almost certain that his plate light was not out. And he was able to, during the stop, exit his car, verify the fact that his plate light was not out, and called that cop on it. Now, that's a hard thing to do because the cops usually get really antsy if you want to exit your vehicle without them ordering you to.
That's the most dangerous thing, having a license plate laid out. That's like death penalty.
Well, the point was he called this cop's lie right there in the middle on video of the traffic stop, and all she could do was just bumble around, and she could not she got caught lying, that was the end of that. But most of the time, most people aren't going to be able to get out of the car to verify it. They have no idea whether it's true or not. And then what do you do about it later on? Are you going to sue them?
In a supervisor's eye, too, it's like they might get like a very, very light slap on the wrist.
Right. Yeah, it's not going to be a big deal. I mean, they know they do this all the time. This is like part of how they do things. Right. If they think you're suspicious for whatever reason and they want to pull you over, but you haven't actually broken any traffic laws, then they'll just make it up. Sydney, anything else you want to share?
No, that's it. I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you so much.
Thanks, dude.
I had
appreciate it.
I had that same experience in Goffstown
with the traffic stop.
Well, here's the thing: is that we were listening to the radio and we responded to a call that there was some guy going to assault or murder someone over drugs, blah blah blah, in Goffstown. And this was literally, I got pulled over right in front of St. Anselm College. And when they came up to the window, I was like, "What are you pulling me over for?" He's like, "Well, we have some suspicious activity in the area, and we saw you drive by a couple times." I'm like, "And what's your probable cause?"
Yeah.
And they knew that they were in the wrong, and they had to let us go. And I filed a complaint right away.
And what did it do?
Nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, we got more coming up here. Maybe more commentary on January 6th or whatever you want to share. You're welcome to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. Hour number 3 is on the way. We got time for you at 603-283-6160. Join us here on Free Talk Live.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless crime spree.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The saga to vote in the next Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives continues, breaking records last set almost 165 years ago. Republican Kevin McCarthy has now lost 11 rounds of voting over 3 days, despite making major concessions to the group of hardliners in his party voting against him. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
It's another one for the history books. The last time the House failed to elect a speaker on the first day of the new Congress was in 1923. Back then, things were decided in the 9th round of voting. But now, with more than 10 rounds of voting gone, this has become the most protracted speaker election since 1859. It all means the House remains paralysed, unable to start work or even swear in new lawmakers until a speaker is elected. McCarthy's detractors seem unwilling to rally behind him, despite concessions, and no other obvious candidate has been identified.
U.S. President Joe Biden announced on Thursday that he is expanding a program that accepts migrants from certain countries, but is also ramping up expelling those who attempt to cross the border illegally. The announcement comes alongside plans for the president to visit the border city of El Paso, Texas on Sunday, as his administration grapples with a surge of migrants and an overwhelmed immigration system. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Under this expanded program, the U.S. will accept up to 30,000 migrants per month from Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela, but only if they go through a formal process, which includes background checks and a sponsor. If they attempt to cross illegally, Biden says they will be expelled to Mexico. The president also announced that he will make a trip to the border city of El Paso, Texas on Sunday to meet with local officials and community leaders who have been on the front lines of a record number of attempted border crossings. This will be Biden's first trip to the border since becoming president, something Republicans and even some Democrats have criticized him for, claiming he's ignored the issue.
Increased job cuts by Amazon and Goldman Sachs might have caused another flat day on the U.S. markets. U.S. stocks ended the day lower on Thursday. FSN's Jody Jacobs has more from New York.
Another cloudy day on the U.S. markets as stocks sank on Thursday. The S&P 500 ended in the red, 1.17% lower, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average shed 340 points. The Nasdaq Composite took a beating, ending 1.47% lower. Filings for unemployment insurance fell 204,000, the lowest since September, according to the Labor Department. One of the U.S.'s major chains, Bed Bath & Beyond, might be a thing of the past. In a statement published before the markets opened, the company said bankruptcy might be a possibility.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, catching up today with the latest developments in Myanmar. The ruling military junta there says it's releasing more than 7,000 prisoners under an amnesty as the country marks 75 years of independence from Britain. But the move comes just days after a court extended the jail sentence for democracy figurehead and Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi. She was arrested almost 2 years ago as her National League for Democracy was about to form a majority in the country's assembly. Graham Stewart is a Myanmar expert and deputy editor of The Critic magazine.
Releases of this kind are often announced on Myanmar's Independence Day. Most of them, those who've been incarcerated for relatively minor crimes and misdemeanors. A few might be said to have been released for political reasons, but there's no suggestion that a wide array of National League for Democracy politicians are going to be released under any form of amnesty. No suggestion that Aung San Suu Kyi, who's just had her sentence increased again, 33 years in detention, now set out for her. So we shouldn't see this announcement as in any way special.
And reflecting that, the Indonesian government, now chairing the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, is coming under increasing pressure to take a tougher line against the military rulers in Myanmar. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. The saga to vote in the next Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives continues, breaking records last set over 100 years ago. President Biden announces plans to try and expel more migrants who attempt to cross the U.S. border illegally. And U.S. stocks closed the day lower after announcements of job cuts by Amazon and Goldman Sachs. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
I just got off the phone with New York. We are the #1 network in the world. And it is an honor to stand before you at such an exciting time. We're stretching boundaries that will irreparably alter people's perception of what they are willing to watch. And our next season will offer tantalizing programming that plays seamlessly into the desire of our viewers. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you just a taste of what ODS has to offer.
You know the rules. Grow a pumpkin or go home. Here's the twist. Only one of you has the real pumpkin seeds.
Are you a pumpkin or not?
You call yourselves pumpkin growers?
I know I didn't get the pumpkin seeds. I dug in there. They're bean sprouts.
Starting a pumpkin alliance. Anyone grows a pumpkin, we split the money.
Get out of my patch.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
What you apparently are hearing right now, other than music, that buzzing sound in the background, this is video, allegedly, of a shooting war going on in Mexico right now. I saw some of the articles, the headlines earlier tonight, but Joey, you just pulled up this crazy video of like tracer bullets in the night sky. Over some
high capacity glowing,
of some kind of actual shooting going on in Mexico, and it's not just that. They're allegedly shooting at airplanes. Apparently, what happened was the son of El Chapo, who you may remember from a few years ago. He was El Chapo was sort of one of the more noteworthy or notorious drug lords down in Mexico. He was arrested by, I believe, the United States.
Yeah, after being doxxed by Sean Penn.
And now apparently his son has been arrested, and it's turned into some sort of all-out, an actual drug war is actually happening. By the way, with you here tonight, it's Ian,
Joa,
and Reed Coverdale.
Reed, have you been seeing any of this news about this crazy stuff happening in Mexico?
I was just seeing it like few seconds before we went live again. So yeah, I haven't been able to dig into it yet. I just saw what you guys were talking about.
Yeah, apparently it's the Mexican military and police, federal police forces versus the drug cartels in an actual armed conflict. I mean, you hear a lot about the quote-unquote war on drugs, but it's usually just the government using its violence to suppress drugs, which are an inanimate object, and the people that are trying to move them from one place to another. It is rare that the drugs or those that actually sell those drugs will actually fight back in this war.
Yeah,
very rare.
I'm curious what El Chapo's son is being arrested for. Like, I would assume it'd be something like murder versus the drug dealing, and now it's getting out of hand. Actually, the clip that you were playing was the Mexican military
firing
at residential
Really?
where they suspected cartels. That was from a helicopter. Yeah,
it looked to me like the shots were coming from the ground.
No, or I'm showing you the clip right now. That's clearly coming from the sky from the
I see what you're
helicopter.
saying. Yeah, okay.
But the Mexican cartel is firing at not just military planes trying to leave the airport, but also passenger flights, allegedly. You just saw a bunch of people in the airplane ducking and hiding underneath their seats. But what's even crazier is that the cartel is in desperate need of medical, so they are kidnapping nurses and doctors from the local hospital to go help.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. There's a lot of crazy clips right now at Libertarian Party Mises Caucus on Twitter. That's where I'm seeing it.
Yeah, apparently they're getting video from the cartels and publishing some of this. Cartel members firing a Barrett M82A1 anti-material rifle at a Mexican Air Force planes leaving the runway. There's another video of the Mexican army being ambushed in another place in Mexico. So this is pretty wild, and I guess this just exploded within the last 24 hours, so it's definitely a developing story. And of course, the takeaway here is none of this would be happening if drugs were legal. Right.
I
mean, this is one of the oldest libertarian positions, and it's one of the most valid, one of the most absolutely, right-on positions that the libertarians have had and continue to have, and sadly are the only people that have.
Mm-hmm.
And no amount of bloodshed in the streets is going to convince people to legalize drugs, unfortunately, even though that's the obvious solution here.
I thought Joe Biden was a champion for legalizing drugs. That's what all the Democrats tell me.
At no point. Where did that even come from?
Because he signed that executive order that makes it so you can go to Canada again if you got caught for menial possession 20 years ago. So, that's basically legalizing drugs.
Yeah, right.
I guess he did pardon people for marijuana possession of a federal level, right? So that did happen within the last year.
Almost none of those people were in jail anymore.
That's true.
That's why I was saying you can go to Canada now. That was basically the biggest penalty that still existed for you. You couldn't go to Canada, and now you can. But why would you want to go to Canada over the last
I wouldn't want to get the COVID shot to get there.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, it's gotten a lot worse.
They're just trying to kill these people.
If you want to comment on this situation down there in Mexico, you're certainly welcome to do that. But it's the war on drugs that has put us in this position. It's the war on drugs that has resulted in the shots being fired at various different people being caught in the crossfire here. It's not the drugs' fault. Drugs are just something that people are going to do. Yeah. They're going to pay whatever price they need to make sure they can get their drugs, and that's why these cartels are so powerful, because they're willing to take the risk of going up against the Mexican army or the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration or whatever other opposition, the police, the sheriffs, and all them. They're willing to risk that possible time in prison for selling this product that people want to buy, voluntarily.
Not that I support the cartels, but I think they're going to win. And the reason why is because I don't think the Mexican government wants to deal with a bunch of casualties over one person. They would rather. I think they would rather. This is just ethically speaking. Would you rather try to harbor this one guy that's really bad, allegedly, supposedly, and allow a bunch of innocent people, military, and just citizens of Mexico to start dying over one person? No, they should release him immediately before this becomes a massive tragic event. And I think it may already be massively tragic.
How many people have died already in this?
I'm going to guess hundreds already.
I mean, was it worth it?
No,
This one guy?
not at all.
I mean, is it going to stop? Is it going to stop the flow of drugs anywhere to take this guy down?
Not at all.
And the reason why is because he's got a lieutenant, right? Like he's got a right-hand man, and you can take that guy down, and he's got a right-hand man, and like there's always going to be somebody who's willing to fill the shoes of the drug kingpin.
And if anything, it can make it stronger. It make it stronger and stronger and stronger.
There's video here of a prison break. So, I mean, you want to talk about ballsy.
Yeah.
These guys, the cartel apparently is outside of a jail in Culican jail. And I presume that is where El Chapo's son is being held. So now you literally have an assault on an actual prison to try to break somebody out of prison. I mean, this is one of the libertarian fantasy stories, right? To actually to have an armed force go. Well, I mean, I don't know if this guy's innocent.
Well, I'm just saying
he's probably a bad guy, but the government's bad guys too. So it's like I don't feel bad about these things happening. You work for the government, you're working for a force of evil. And now another evil force is turning on you because they were fine if you just let them do their drug dealing and everything, and they leave you alone for the most part. But now you go and you capture the drug dealer's son, and now they're pissed.
It seems like it's a full-on sort of roundup because they are doing house-to-house raids right now
on alleged drug kingpin type.
I guess in the whole area. I mean, here's some footage for you. Yeah. And they're just going house to house, fully armed, not really well uniformed up. And
how do you even know who those people are?
You really don't.
Right? Perfect opportunity for a home invasion. If you want to comment here, the number is 603-283-6160. It's the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus. Their Twitter handle is LP Mises Caucus. They're the ones that have a thread going on right now. There's posts within the last 20 minutes here of fresh, just insane violence, explosions, drone footage, vehicles being set on fire, supply lines ambushed, just absolutely crazy stuff. So as this continues to develop, if you are watching it closely and you want to clue us in on what's going on, I know there's a lot of expatriates down there in Mexico. Are you seeing this actually happen where you are? And do you want to comment? Feel free to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Meanwhile, we were talking about January 6th, which looks nothing like what we're seeing happening in Mexico right now, where there's an actual assault on a prison, amongst other things. But Reed, you were talking about the ridiculousness of people acting like that January 6th was in any way, shape, or form an insurrection, or that any violence happened outside of the police themselves shooting an innocent woman to death. Other comments, you're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just healthy for people to remember that Alec Baldwin killed more people than the January 6th protesters did.
And he's not in prison.
Exactly.
No, that gun just went off. I mean...
That's true.
It's because he pulled the trigger is why it went off.
Yeah. I mean, it's like he doesn't think we know how a single action revolver works. You kind of have to have the hammer pulled back and pull the trigger to make it just go off. But yeah, I don't know. It's also funny. I'm excited because January 6th, the entire day, I just blow it way out of proportion to downplay it against the media's best wishes. I remember last year. Kamala Harris said September. Yeah, she said December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021 are all days that'll live in infamy. But when you were pulling up those videos of what's going on down in Mexico, I almost said, wow, it's almost as bad as January 6th.
Man. And by the way, El Chapo's son is being arrested because of an order from the United States.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
For drug smuggling.
Allegedly. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, Mexico could have just simply ignored that, right? They could have said, this is probably not going to be in our best interests. This guy, he's got his issues, but we know this is literally a powder keg. And now look.
Yeah.
Didn't Trump just say recently he was going to declare war on the cartels? if he's president.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he's been a tough talker on drug enforcement the whole time. He's been by no means has he been kind to even marijuana decrim or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I mean, the Republicans, this should have been the easiest silver platter for them in history. Like, everybody hates COVID mandates. Everyone just wants to be left alone. And instead, they're like, we are going to fast track, fast track trials for drug dealers, and we're going to execute them. That's what we stand for as Republicans. Like, wow, nice.
Stupid.
Yeah.
Will they ever learn? I don't think they will.
Why they get kickbacks from Big Pharma? Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to learn, because it doesn't matter if half of Mexico gets set on fire, or even if this spills into to the United States as well. They'll just use this as the excuse to say, see, this is why the DEA needs 10 times the budget than what they currently have. We've got a cartel members. They're attacking us. Clearly, we need more money to be funneled into this war on drugs so we can fight it and finally win the war on drugs after 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, or however the hell long it was. I guess it's officially started in the 70s, but cannabis was prohibited in the 30s, of course. So
hey, whatever the U.S. government's smoking, I want some.
Yeah, I don't know about that, man.
I know, you're right.
I want to turn into one of these people.
No, for real. I'm just joking.
It's not going to matter. I mean, there's incredible destruction going on in Mexico right now over this insane war on drugs, and people are just going to dig further into their positions. I wish I was more optimistic about it. I wish I could believe that seeing this happening, people would say, you know what, we need to end the war on drugs. Take the drugs out of the hands of the cartels and put them in the hands of people who want to actually provide a product or service peacefully to their neighbors. Because that's who would be selling meth. That's who would be selling cocaine. That's who would be selling, all these things. You could go down to Walgreens and you could buy a bottle of meth or whatever right off the shelf. That's the way it ought to be. That would solve this entire problem.
You could defund the cartels by legalizing drugs.
Instantly. It would literally be overnight. They would then, if you legalize drugs completely, they would have, the only other things they could do as a cartel would be traffic in anything else that's prohibited. So if they couldn't traffic in drugs, then they might traffic in guns. And of course, if you have guns that are legal as well, then they can't traffic in guns. So then they could maybe traffic in prostitution or gambling or something like that. But the more things that are, victimless so-called crimes that we can end the prohibition of, the fewer things the gangs can control. It's just that simple. And
no, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm talking to the choir here. But if you think that this war on drugs can somehow be won, that all you need to do is spend a few more $1 trillion, because I'm pretty sure we're into the trillion territory since the 1970s inside the United States. And despite all of that money being spent, despite the millions of people in the United States that have been put behind bars and continue to be put behind bars for possession and or selling of drugs, drugs are just as available as they've ever been. They're not going to go away. And I mean, why it is that Republicans or Democrats have not realized this and made a change on this. Like, even some of the cops have come around. You've got Law Enforcement Against Prohibition that renamed themselves, by the way. They're now, I believe, Law Enforcement Action Partnership, because they're no longer just against prohibition, but they're also against police militarization and things like that. So kudos to those guys. So you got some actual cops who've come out. We've heard of retired DEA agents who've come out and told the truth. Like, there was a guy that got prosecuted, a DEA agent recently we discussed on the show within the last few months. He got prosecuted for some corruption. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And then before he checked into prison, he did an exclusive interview where he just laid it all out there. And he said, yeah, we all know this is BS. Everybody in the DEA knows that the drugs, you can never stop it. We know that this is pointless, but we do it anyway because, well, it's how we get paid.
And one of my favorite former law enforcements from Never Get Busted.
Barry Cooper.
He just started up his vlogging.
He's doing a podcast. Yeah,
it's great. I love listening to him. He's a straight shooter on all this, and he's been calling them all out. And he probably feels safe about where he's doing it, Philippines. So,
is he in the Philippines now?
Yes, he's been in the Philippines for 5 years.
Really? Because the last I heard, he was in Puerto Vallarta, so he left there.
Well, I guess he went to visit, but yeah, he's been in Philippines. His wife is from there, and
his new wife.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's not hard to live there because it's
there's a psychopath running that country too. I mean,
yeah.
What's his name? We talked about him during the 2016 election. Duterte, the president there. They call him the Trump of the Philippines. Do you know anything about this guy?
No, I don't.
Have you ever heard about Duterte, Reed?
I haven't.
I heard there was a lot of like assassinations on mayors and that sort.
He was a mayor previously, and he's like a total psychopath who has actually, allegedly, according to one of his men from back in the day, he's allegedly done actual executions himself, like shot people to death. Like he is a lunatic.
Nice.
So, like he did some, when he got elected down there, he was even more like hardcore as far as what he would be willing to say than even Trump was. Like, you had the whole grabber by the, thing that happened with Trump.
Yeah.
Like this guy is even more offensive than that. And the people down there loved him. They elected him with no problem.
That's wild.
He's crazy.
Maybe they elect him in fear, like everyone else does here.
Yeah, very well possible. So, I mean, I wouldn't say the Philippines is like a good place or a fun or a free place to live necessarily. I'm sure, like most places, if you're a wealthy gringo, you can be left alone if you live in your gated community and
or
pay off the cops.
Barry Cooper likes to call it his $1 million peso house.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I heard like one of the biggest commodities, or black market commodities out in the Philippines, is a block of steel.
Why?
Because you can't import guns, so a block of steel could be made into a gun. So it's highly sought after.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's go to the phones here. We got Sarah on the line in New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, yeah, hold up. Let me speakerphone. Oh, I'm runner up. So, anyways, did I bring up that there's an attempt to pay our state legislatures full-time salary here?
Oh, God. No, you haven't brought that up, but it doesn't surprise me. They're trying to increase the salary of the legislators in New Hampshire. By the way, New Mexico, there's not a lot to like about New Mexico, but one thing that they do in New Mexico that is good is it is a part-time legislature. If I recall correctly, they don't meet full-time, do they, Sarah?
Well, they meet 1 year, 30 days 1 year, and then 2 months the year afterwards. And definitely, this is the time. I mean, the session was working pretty well like 100 years ago when New Mexico first became a state, at 1919 or something, because there was nothing really to govern, and everybody just owned their own ranch, and everybody made their own rules, and that they come and stole their cows, just shot them or hung them or whatever they did back then.
Okay.
So that these 1 month and 2 month sessions don't cut it anymore because
See, this is what I don't understand, Sarah. I mean, New Mexico is known as being an incredibly corrupt, incredibly big government kind of place. And so I guess it's proof because in New Hampshire, it's a part-time legislature as well. Now, they meet roughly 4 or 5 months out of the year, I think, typically, depending. It's mostly like in the first 3 months of the year is when most of the hearings and that sort of thing happen. But it just goes to show that even though we libertarian types might like the idea of a part-time legislature, it's not enough for them to just be part-time, because even though New Mexico is a part-time legislature, they've got a huge government, a huge welfare state. There's all kinds of government programs that they pass. So even though they only meet 2 months or whatever per year, they do a lot of damage in just that 2 months' time. So clearly, that's not the only factor. It has to do with the culture. It has to do with the fact that New Hampshire has that freedom-minded culture, has that small government-minded culture, and you guys don't.
Well, the thing about it is that you're right. I mean, New Mexico has always been the poorest, the dumbest, the stupidest, and the clumsiest, and the bottom of the list. And the thing about it is that it's never enough time to do any proper legislature. They just do
oh God, I can't imagine how much worse it would be if they actually were there for more time. Is that what the proposal is? Does not only pay them more, but to actually allow them to meet for more time?
Well, it's not. I did not know that part of it. They want to make it at least $50,000 a year so they could pay a house mortgage, a car payment. So it's a livable salary. So somebody that's serious like yourself, somebody with a degree that would take these jobs and raise a family, because they just all they get is retirees or people that are really wealthy that could afford to do all this, and that's not representing the whole population.
Well,
so,
I believe, and I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say, I've said it for years, is that if you're going to work for the public, you should not get paid. You should be doing it at the kindness of your heart because you actually feel true about what you're doing, and that is the motivator into making this world a better place. Your motivator should not be because I want a salary. That's just going to create career politicians,
corruption,
continue their job.
Yeah, and you've already got enough of a problem with these $100 a year legislators. I mean, it is a more citizen legislature here in New Hampshire, and I think that that's ultimately a good thing. You raise those rates, and you'll start getting more professional liars, more lawyers, more politician types in there, whereas there's a lot of people that just come in, they do 2 years, and then they go back to work. And that's a much more of a service-oriented position. Thank you, Sarah, for the call tonight. We got more coming up. You can join us on Free Talk Live. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The saga to vote in the next Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives continues, breaking records last set almost 165 years ago. Republican Kevin McCarthy has now lost 11 rounds of voting over 3 days, despite making major concessions to the group of hardliners in his party voting against him. FSN's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
It's another one for the history books. The last time the House failed to elect a speaker on the first day of the new Congress was in 1923. Back then, things were decided in the 9th round of voting. But now, with more than 10 rounds of voting gone, this has become the most protracted speaker election since 1859. It all means the House remains paralysed, unable to start work or even swear in new lawmakers until a speaker is elected. McCarthy's detractors seem unwilling to rally behind him, despite concessions, and no other obvious candidate has been identified.
U.S. President Joe Biden announced on Thursday that he is expanding a program that accepts migrants from certain countries, but is also ramping up expelling those who attempt to cross the border illegally. The announcement comes alongside plans for the president to visit the border city of El Paso, Texas on Sunday, as his administration grapples with a surge of migrants and an overwhelmed immigration system. FSN's Tony Waterman has more.
Under this expanded program, the U.S. will accept up to 30,000 migrants per month from Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela, but only if they go through a formal process, which includes background checks and a sponsor. If they attempt to cross illegally, Biden says they will be expelled to Mexico. The president also announced that he will make a trip to the border city of El Paso, Texas on Sunday to meet with local officials and community leaders who have been on the front lines of a record number of attempted border crossings. This will be Biden's first trip to the border since becoming president, something Republicans and even some Democrats have criticized him for, claiming he's ignored the issue.
Increased job cuts by Amazon and Goldman Sachs might have caused another flat day on the U.S. markets. U.S. stocks ended the day lower on Thursday. FSN's Jody Jacobs has more from New York.
Another cloudy day on the U.S. markets as stocks sank on Thursday. The S&P 500 ended in the red, 1.17% lower, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average shed 340 points. The Nasdaq Composite took a beating, ending 1.47% lower. Filings for unemployment insurance fell 204,000, the lowest in September, according to the Labor Department. One of the U.S.'s major chains, Bed Bath & Beyond, might be a thing of the past. In a statement published before the markets opened, the company said bankruptcy might be a possibility.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FS.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. You can bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Ian,
Joa,
and joining us remotely,
Reed Coverdale.
Reed is here as well. Don't forget, you can check both of these guys out. They have their own channels out there. Joa is Breaking the Flaw on both Odyssey and YouTube. Reed is Naturalist Capitalist on also both Odyssey and YouTube. So make sure you go and check those guys out. You can find our channel, which is Free Talk Live, over at video.freetalklive.com. That'll take you right to our Odyssey channel, and then you can use that search bar to search for Breaking the Flaw and for Naturalist Capitalist. Get more of these guys when you get a chance.
You'll enjoy my channel. There's a lot of good stuff on it.
Yeah, I think so. So let's see. We were talking about the January 6th thing. Reed, did you feel like you got your thoughts out on that, or was there more you wanted to say about the anniversary coming up tomorrow?
Yeah, just do everything you can to belittle the media's commemoration of the date, because, I mean, if anything should be remembered about January 6th, it really should just be that your politicians can still be afraid of you sometimes. I mean, Justin O'Donnell did a great rant. It's on the Free State Live YouTube channel. He did a rant at PorkFest about the right to revolution that is written into the New Hampshire Constitution, and how January 6th was the only day that he's seen in his entire life where the government was reminded that they do fear us still if things get bad enough. So the spirit of January 6th of like terrifying your legislators if they're stealing from you and ruining your life, I think that's a great sentiment to have. But the thing was a joke, so don't let people gaslight you into thinking it was a terrorist attack.
Yeah, I like where you're coming from on that, because as an advocate of peace, I don't think that violence is the solution. And the people at January 6th were not violent. They just went on an unauthorized tour of a building that was ostensibly their quote-unquote building, right? We keep getting told, as we're growing up in this country, we're told that, oh, well, you are the government and we're all part of this, and, all this mythology that is total BS, of course. And then, when they decide they want to go off the beaten path from the tour guide at the Capitol building and go and see their own version of the tour, then it's called this dramatic thing, and it's an insurrection and this and that. It's like they didn't threaten anybody. They didn't hold a gun to somebody's head. There weren't any, I don't think any of them even, there was never even an allegation that the crowd was armed in any significant manner.
Not that I noticed.
Unless you count the podium as an arm.
Well, that Buffalo guy, he had horns, man. He could charge somebody or something. So.
He looks scary.
He does.
So, yeah, I think that's a great point. And the fact is, those politicians were deathly afraid of just people. Yep. They weren't doing anything of violence. They were the one who were violence was being used against them. There was a guy that this cop shot this woman to death in a hallway over there in a stairwell or something. So, yeah, I think that's a great point. That just goes to show how cowardly these politicians truly are. When they were not under any sort of threat whatsoever, they were literally cowering and hiding. And that is who they truly are, those people.
Yeah, God forbid you ever see them on the front lines of the wars that they're starting.
No, that's why they send children, right? Like they send people's kids to go and die for them.
Yeah.
Because they are cowards.
But they will condemn the violence on January 6th that, didn't happen aside from what they committed. But bombed Syria 2 weeks later.
So let's go back to a few more of these Gallup poll numbers here. We've got the people in the United States are not looking. They don't have rose-colored glasses on about the immediate future, at least. 8 out of 10 U.S. adults, according to Gallup, think 2023 is going to be a year of economic difficulty with higher rather than lower taxes and a growing rather than shrinking budget deficit. So Americans think, 8 out of 10 Americans think the government's going to spend more money than it brings in, which is completely believable. Like, these people are making a sane decision here.
Like
and
forever, the government never existed.
Right. More than 6 out of 10 think prices will rise at a high rate. Because remember, the money that they were spending, we were talking earlier tonight about the 2020 Trump signed government giveaway bills of over $2 trillion. Remember that we were just getting into that. And it takes time for that money to kind of get filtered into the economy. It goes to like the politically connected corporations,
defense contractors.
Right, it goes to the military-industrial complex, and eventually they buy things with it, and eventually that kind of trickles down and it increases the prices. But it doesn't happen overnight. So, and I don't know how long it takes. It may be that we're now experiencing the inflation, the real kind of strength of it, from what happened back in 2020.
Well, there's going to be a point where no one's going to be able to catch up to it, even those that are, like upper middle class. They're going to be constantly fighting to try to make do. And
you mean they're going to lose their quality of life? They're going to lose the buying power of their dollar, and the raises to whatever kind of increase in pay that they might receive is not going to catch up.
Well, but Ian, that's the silver lining of inflation is higher wages. Didn't you read that headline? Right.
Hey, everybody's making $15 an hour now. Of course, it doesn't buy what $10 an hour used to buy.
Right. Well, I guess what I was saying is the upper middle class is really the breaking point for all this, because once they realize, okay, I can't pay for my life insurance, my health insurance, all the insurances, and they were like, all right, we were setting goals for savings so I can send my kids to college. When they can't reach these goals, and yes, they'll still put food on the table, but when they reach these sort of financial goals that they were setting for all these years, and they get that breaking point, then they're going to get really concerned, and that's when things are going to really happen. Where who knows what ultimately is going to happen to their homes, and it's gonna be wild times.
Well, home prices may be coming down soon. That's a very, very realistic possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be a good buying opportunity for somebody that's ready for that. But
do you think it's going to be as dramatic as 2008, the housing crisis? Or
man, I have no idea. I'm not
that was a targeted sort of movement. That's where the breakdown is, because they were funneling the money specifically for housing. So now it's like a broad spectrum of
it's just a market crash across the board.
Right. Larger recession.
Everyone bought more way than they should have.
Yeah, I know the banks back then were just issuing loans to anyone that could fog a mirror, and I don't think they've gone completely back to that policy since that time. But I'm not a bank loan guy, so I can't really say. That's an excellent question, Reed. And if there's anybody out there that really knows how to look at the financials of a situation, I'd love to hear about it. The number is 603-283-6160. They say here over half of Americans are predicting unemployment will increase in 2023, which seems almost impossible. I mean, every time I look around, I was in Concord today. I was had a meeting with my attorney, and we like to go out to grab lunch whenever we're in Concord at the Red Arrow, which is a really cool 24-hour diner. And every time I'm there, I always we're looking outside out the window, and every place that has a marquee says now hiring. Every single place. And it's been like that for over a year. So they haven't been able to hire, apparently, whoever it is that they're looking to hire. The Red Arrow is hiring all positions.
I feel like this is like a choke out point for small business and mom and pop business. And it's going to just completely eradicate that. And it's just going to be corporate. It's all going to be corporate businesses.
It's going to be easier for them to survive. That's what happened under the COVID restrictions.
Exactly.
Let's see what else here. The domestic front. 90% of Americans say 2023 will be a year of political conflict in the U.S. Well, that's a guarantee. 72% think the crime rate will rise, which is true. If prices are going up, people are going to be more desperate. And the reality is, even people who are not of a criminal mentality are more likely to engage in stealing and things like that if they feel like they're desperate, if they feel like they can, they're not making ends meet.
I see the cops over in Market Basket in Manchester all the time now because people steal.
Shoplifting?
Yeah. And it's ridiculous. I was even accused once. I thought I was going to get arrested.
Wow.
Because they're willing to hire anybody, right? And they hired someone that barely spoke English, and she didn't explain to me well that, this is not a produce line and we can't weigh the food, which I found out later. Huh. And I had a pepper and an onion that I didn't pay for, but she bagged it and put it into my bag, right?
And they called the cops on you?
Well, the cops were right there. I'm like, I'm not going to purposely steal in front of cops. And I thought I paid for it and everything. I'm like, we're all good, right? Wow. And she's like, yep, you're all set, or something to that degree. I couldn't understand her. A little bit of a numbskull. I even said it to the manager when they came out. I'm outside. I'm eating my sushi. It's not like I didn't buy anything.
You didn't make a run for it, huh?
No, I was standing out there because I'm like, I might have gotten some footage, right? So I was just hanging out there to see if anything was going to happen. And before I could really put a piece of sushi in my mouth, they're running toward me, and I'm like, what? Like, what'd I do? And they're like, let me check your receipt. And I'm like, okay, I didn't do anything.
This is cops or the management of the store?
The manager and a cop that was there. And yeah, it's just ridiculous.
So what happened?
Well, they took my pepper and onion back. And they're like, do you want to pay for that? I'm like, no, I'm not waiting in the line, and this is just ridiculous. So I don't know if I even want to shop here anymore.
Wow.
And I do go back there, but
they didn't arrest you.
They didn't arrest me.
Well, that's good.
I was just like, just baloney. Anyways,
64% of Americans believe the U.S. power in the world will decline, which would be a good thing.
Great.
73% think China's power will increase. However, 64% of Americans expect Russia's power in the world will decrease in 2023, likely a reflection of that country's recent setbacks in the war against Ukraine, or at least that's what the mainstream media keeps saying. I don't know. Do you buy that, Reed? Do you buy the claim that Russia's having all this trouble in Ukraine and they're getting defeated left and right?
Well, I was talking to my brother about this the other day. I don't think that the media is accurately reporting on what Russia's goals are. I mean, they're still reporting as though Russia's goal is to take over all of Ukraine.
Never was.
I don't think that's ever been the goal. So, I mean, I don't think that they're having an easy time, but I don't think they're just getting absolutely smashed. And on top of that, even if they are, getting hammered, it's because we've given Ukraine over $100 billion in aid.
Yep.
So, I was telling my brother, I was like, if it's true that Ukraine is just completely demolishing Russia, why did we just give them $45 billion more dollars? If they're demolishing Russia, then they should be completely fine on their own, but they're begging for more money and more weapons all the time. So I don't think that narrative is completely accurate myself.
I mean, obviously there's a bunch of that money just rolling into the pockets of Zelensky and all of his connected buddies or whatever. Who knows how much of it actually ends up in the form of missiles or tanks or whatever it is that they're supposedly buying with it. David is in New Mexico. David, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Breaking the flaw. I was going to ask Joe a question, but you remind me of a story which is worth telling because it's educational. Joe, your shoplifting accusation. I was in a similar store, and I was in a Walgreens. This was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the manager comes up to me and he says, "Can I have my bottle back?" And what I had done is I'd walked into the store and I put my backpack in the cart because I did not want my backpack ripped off out of my vehicle because that's where the valuables are, is in the backpack. So I brought it in the store, put it in the cart, and I went into the liquor section of a Walgreens and I put a couple bottles in my cart. And then I'm like, oh crap, I don't think I can take these bottles out of the liquor section without paying for them. So I put them back and went over to the regular section and got my items.
Hold on. Is that a thing in New Mexico where you can't leave the liquor section of the store without buying the liquor?
No, it's probably a Walgreens thing. They want you to pay at their register in the liquor section before you take the bottles out of the liquor section.
Oh,
so
okay.
I put them back, and I'm in the regular section getting my things, and the manager comes over to me from the well, I guess he's a general manager. He says, "Can I have my bottles back?" He's accusing me of stealing, right? And so I go, "I don't have your bottles." And he goes, yes, you do. And I said, call the cops. And so he goes in the back room, and I wait about 10 minutes, and he comes back out, and I said, "You called the cops, right?" and he wouldn't answer me. And I said, I don't think you called the cops. So I called the cops. I called the dispatch, and I said, you got to get over here because this guy's accusing me of shoplifting. So the cop shows up about 20 minutes later, and I say to him, you need to go through my bag and my person and make sure that I don't have this bottle as described like, and the manager's standing right there, and I said, that's the description of the bottle you're looking for, right? And he said, yeah. And so the cop does what I instruct him to do, looks through my bag, and he doesn't check my person because there's nowhere for a half gallon of liquor bottle to be on my person. And he says, nope, nothing here. And so I do this. I also refused to move out of the view of where I knew there were security cameras, and I did all of my business in this tone of voice so that every customer in the store would know that the manager falsely accused me of shoplifting, and they were all like high-fiving me. And even the cop was basically high-fiving me also, although he couldn't do it within a literal high five. He had to just use some body language to let me know that, hey, well done, son. And anyway,
well done, David.
The manager left me alone after that.
Yeah, I didn't stop eating sushi too when the cop and the manager came over to me, and I have like a mouthful and I'm talking to him, and then people were asking me afterwards like what was going on. I'm like, they're accusing me of stealing, and it's like, good luck in there,
Right.
David, thanks for the call tonight, man. I appreciate it. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Let's see. What other news do you need to know about? Oh, here's an update for you. Over the weekend, there was the news that, and we reported on this, that the Attorney General in the U.S. Virgin Islands had brought a lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase. Did you guys hear about that story?
I did.
I did not.
Yeah, so it was getting all this play like, oh, they're finally going after someone related to Jeffrey Epstein. The claim was that J.P. Morgan Chase sort of looked the other way.
Yeah.
While Jeffrey Epstein was laundering money or taking payments for sex with teenage girls or whatever it was that he was allegedly doing with this particular bank account. And so the top prosecutor, the Attorney General there, Denise George, had brought an indictment or some sort of, maybe it was a civil case. Looks like it was it was a civil case, 30-page lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase, saying that they turned a blind eye to evidence of human trafficking over more than a decade because of Epstein's own financial footprint and because of the deals and clients that Epstein brought and promised to bring to the bank. So after filing this lawsuit, guess what happened to the Attorney General? She got fired.
Disappeared.
Yeah, no, well, she probably still is alive, but she no longer has her
thought
job.
she might have hanged herself with her paper sheets while her cameras shut off.
Not yet, at least.
No.
Well, guess who else was down in the U.S. Virgin Islands while all this was happening?
Who?
Joe Biden.
Oh.
Coincidence? I mean,
that's a weird coincidence.
Yeah, he was on vacation. Yeah. Remember, Reed, we talked about how Joe Biden signed the $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill?
Indeed.
They flew that down to him on vacation. They actually brought the physical bill down for him to sign.
Like 5,000 pages.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. I don't think he actually has to sign all, 5,000.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like they just give him a binder or whatever, and he signs the.
What was he afraid of? An insurrection or something?
Yeah, even if we had that stipulation that you had to sign every page of the bill, that would even slow
it down.
Like if we had to actually print the money. Because we don't really print all this money. It's
That's
just
true.
digital.
That would slow it down,
if
too.
we actually had to physically print it off, like however many trillion it's been over the last, 3 years, I don't think we would have even been physically able to do that in this amount of time.
Be quite the photo op to see it.
Yeah.
Well, Jim Babka from downsizedc.org for 2 decades now has been trying to promote this bill that would require Congress to actually read out loud the legislation before they can vote on it. And I mean, it's a great proposal, but none of these Congress people are ever going to propose that.
I mean, how long does it take to read 1,000,000 words? You know what I mean? Like that's
well, to put it in perspective, the Bible's about 1,200 pages long. So these bills that are like 5,000 pages, it's like 4 Bibles.
Yeah, how long that would take, I have no idea. And they wouldn't be able to get away. They wouldn't be able to accomplish it. They'd all fall asleep at some point. It would be just mind numbing to have to listen to that.
They already fall asleep, you know.
So yeah, they fired this lady, according to the story at lawandcrime.com. Days after her filing the lawsuit on New Year's Eve, Ms. George was removed from her post. Local news outlets in the Virgin Islands reported the Attorney General had not informed the territory's governor about her impending enforcement action. Why would she have to? It's her job. Does the Attorney General go in New Hampshire to the governor before the Attorney General brings a lawsuit against somebody? I mean, when does that happen? You hire this person to where they can just act and do their crap job, which, I'm not a fan of attorneys general in overall, right? Like they are the people that bring war on drugs charges and all kinds of other victimless crime charges against people. So, I mean, by no means do I think this person is a good person. They're probably just trying to make some sort of political points by doing this.
She was just doing her job.
Well, the idea that she would need to go and talk to the governor first just doesn't make any sense, but that was what they were saying, that she didn't get permission first, and so he fired her over it. Quote, I relieved Denise George of her duties as Attorney General this weekend, he wrote in a statement, saying further, I thank her for her service to the people of the territory during the past 4 years as Attorney General and wish her the best in future endeavors. The governor's spokesman declined to elaborate, saying, quote, I'm not at liberty to discuss details on personnel matters. So the fix is in on that one. Now, what the question is, what's going to happen to the lawsuit, right? Because she filed the suit. It's still in play, technically. It would just be whoever it is that is her follow-up, her replacement. In theory, they would then take that suit and either continue it or they would withdraw it from the court system. What do you think's more likely in this situation here?
Nothing's going to happen.
Things that make you go, Yeah, I mean, the whole idea that there's ever going to be any real quote-unquote justice in the Epstein case, I mean, is pure fantasy.
Well,
yeah, every time they've gotten close, they just reach a settlement instead of, some sort of punishment taking place.
Well, supposedly one of Epstein's victims came out recently with the lists of elite clientele that she was going to expose. Yeah, like it's still.
Do you know who it was?
I thought this may have been covered, but
did she actually name names or just say she
hasn't yet?
Going to?
She's going to. She has a list.
Okay.
Do you know if it's one of the Farmer sisters or Virginia Giuffre or?
I'm not sure.
No. Yeah. I've been out of the loop on that for a little while, but.
Yeah, that'll be interesting if it actually goes somewhere. Of course, she's probably putting a target on her back by doing something like this. And of course, it's just going to be her word. Is she going to have evidence? Like, at least with the Epstein Lolita Express plane, they have an actual flight log, right? Where you can say, oh yeah, Bill Clinton was on this flight on this day or whatever. But, she's just going to say things, and it'll get some.
The thing that's amazing about this whole situation is once one of the dominoes falls, it's going to be it's just going to be cascading all over the place. Everyone's going to be incriminated because
each other.
Yeah,
they'll point fingers.
So there's a lot of resistance to that first domino going down because they realize, hey, if you go down, I'm going down, and we're all going down together because it's all going to get exposed. But
it is the house of cards that should have already been toppled.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say I'm optimistic that anything's going to come of this. Like, even if this girl releases a big, long list of people, it's going to be just her word, and that's not going to be enough to... I mean, there's going to be some people that'll get, oh, no, my favorite celebrity was indicted by this woman, but that's not going to be enough to kill their careers. Or, I mean, look what's happened with... was it Kevin Spacey, right? Like, I mean, he's been accused of all kinds of stuff, and I bet you he's still going to get acting gigs in Hollywood, right?
Oh, sure. I won't be watching them.
His movies?
Yeah. I'd actually never really liked anything he was in.
I don't know. I enjoyed
He did play good psychopaths, but...
Maybe there's a reason for that.
There's a reason.
He wasn't really acting at all. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to be optimistic here because the system is so corrupt. Even if these names come out, even if they're verified, right? Like, even if there's a way to prove the claims, it's not like, you're going to catch them all. Right?
No.
The whole system attracts psychopaths. The whole system attracts sociopaths. It attracts people that are interested in power over other human beings. And even if you were to put these people in jail, and the odds that is to happen out of this is near to zero, right? Like there's the chance that they could be outed. There's the chance that outing them might actually hurt their career, and then there's the chance they could actually go to prison for it. Like the amount goes down, the chance of those things happening goes down as
the reason why they got away with it already is because they're connected.
We're out of time tonight. Check out these guys breaking the flaw for Joa over at Odyssey and YouTube. Naturalist Capitalist for more of Reed on Odyssey and YouTube. And more Free Talk Live tomorrow night. You can join us online in the meantime over at freetalklive.com. And don't forget amp.freetalklive.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire.